Hi everyone, and welcome to the stream. I'm Jen from Jen's Little Corner. Today we're going to be talking about the lovely furore that Miss J.K. Rowling has created with her essay to people about trans people, and a couple of the other things that have happened in politics and the courts in the US and the UK. With me today, I have this lovely panel. We may have a few people joining us a little bit later. There are a few people still trying to sort out technical difficulties and people who are running a little late. So that could have people jump in and out during the stream. But I'm going to go around and introduce a few people, although I'm pretty sure most people in the chat know everyone here already. So first up, the ever wonderful Jay from Nevermore Tavern, who kindly gave up his slot tonight so that I could do this stream, and is my moderator for tonight and sort of co-host. Although I think Jay's planning on trying to stay as quiet as he can for this one. Thank you so much, Jay.
Nah, not a problem. Just so everybody knows, like I said, I'll be moderating the chat here. You know, if needed, I will mute. But I'll let. I'm going to try. I don't expect I'm going to have to. I will be watching the live chat. So if anybody, Raven, anybody's got any questions or comments, make sure you tag myself, and then I will get them in when appropriate and when we can. I don't expect there to be any fuss between the panel itself. So I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to relax, watch what's going on, keep an eye on stuff. So, like I said, any questions for the chat or in the chat, excuse me, make sure you tag me or in, I can get them out. Yeah. So I am going to mute and go off camera because I'm not really with this, but I will be here. I am listening. I am watching. So
cool. Thank you so much, Jay.
Yep.
Cool. And first, I'll go around from here. I think what I'll do is I'll duck down to MathBlade down the bottom first and say thank you so much for coming, MathBlade.
Thank you very much for having me. I know I've been kind of hit and miss on some of your streams, but sometimes with an event happen, you make time, and it's a pleasure to be invited back and back on.
All right.
I'm for gender and age. I'm in my mid-30s. I am an ass-speed trans man. So thanks again. He, him, please.
Thanks, MathBlade. And Granny, thank you for coming.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm GodlessGranny. I am not in my usual place because Robin is in my studio. And Robin rightfully has a bigger place in this chat than I do, because Robin is trans, but I am here as a trans ally because Robin is my son. And that's why I gave Robin the studio. And so I'm working on the iPad, which I'm not used to doing, and it'll be jiggling a little bit and I can't see the chat. But hey, Robin's got a bigger part in this than I do.
And so from there we might as well go to Robin. Hi, Robin. So nice to meet you in person.
Hey. Yeah, definitely. As said, I'm GodlessGranny's son, trans, ace. Probably, I'm assuming the youngest on the panel.
Yeah, I think that would be a safe assumption.
Yeah. So I'm here to represent the weird Gen Z people. Don't know what else to say. Follow me on Twitter for half-baked Transformers hot takes.
And Julie. Thank you for coming, Julie.
Oh, of course. Hi, I'm Julie Little Boyce, and my spouse is non-binary, and so I'm a cis woman. I'm genderqueer. I don't have as big of a dog in this fight as people who identify differently, but we also have the son of a very close friend of ours. Friend of ours is a trans teenager, and we love him very much. So I am here as as an ally and as someone who loves trans people very, in my personal life, very deeply, and also have a lot of trans friends. And I don't like it when people hurt my friends. So that's why I'm here.
And last but by no means least, the absolutely gorgeous and wonderful Jenni Morgan.
Good evening. I guess I represent the other end of this, Robin. I'm the old dinosaur here. I've been around in the in the trans business since the 70s.
The trans business.
And I've been fighting the damn TERFs since then, which makes it for me about a 45-year effort. I've retired from my working life, and I'm going to be retiring from this life too pretty soon. I'm just tired. I'm tired of these people with their half-baked truths, with the very same words that they've used for the last 45 years. I'm tired of the simplistic, immature nature of their thought line, of their arguments. And I am mostly sick of how much they hurt us through their deception and lying to the public. People are very easily duped, as we know, based on who our president is.
No, people are
and it's going to be a long battle, and it's not, and you're not going to win it either. It's going to be here for another generation or two. But definitely. I have a lot of faith in you guys. I've seen nothing but good out of the movement of today, and I think that you're going to put a big dent in these people in the next year or so. So,
I hope to put some dents in J.K. Rowling.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you all for joining me. Like I said, we might have a couple of other people joining us. A couple of people with tech issues. Yeah, hard to join a panel when your audio doesn't work, sort of thing. And a few people who, yeah, didn't are supposed to be here, but aren't. And I think one of them is actually working, so she can't, unfortunately, make it. I also want to send an apology from Jen Aldrich. She was going to be part of this. Something cropped up. She was unable to be a part of it. Hence why this is not a Jen Perspective show. It's just my thing. Because we didn't want to reorganize just because she wasn't available. So, thank you to Jen for her help behind the scenes, and sorry you couldn't make it. So, let's get going with this. Miss Rowling has been a bit of a thorn in the side for the trans community for a while now. It all started with a liking of a Magdalene Burns statement on Twitter, and anyone who doesn't know who Magdalene Burns was, she was almost like crowned Queen TERF for a time. Dreadfully horrible person, in all honesty. She had the audacity to describe trans women as blackface actors. And completely advocated for basically the removal of anything trans from society. Not a nice person. And this is one of the first people that JK got herself in touch with to find out information about trans people. Not even a trans person, but an actual hard-slung TERF. So we're getting the idea of where JK comes from, but she also grew up in the middle of TERFville in the UK, and as any of those of us on the panel that are trans know, that the UK is very much top and centre for TERFdom. Whilst we get the same bigots in Australia and the US, and probably you guys get a bit more in the US than I do down here in Australia, the UK seems to have a disproportionate number of very loudmouth, gender-critical people.
Yeah.
It's
What
kind of
is
astonishing.
wrong with you people?
Yeah. It's a shame we're doing this at a time that we couldn't get somebody from the UK on, but it just worked out that way. And when the UK people that we'd asked weren't available, we shifted to a time that suited me better, and suited MathBlade better as well. So, because it is, and not to point out that not to suggest in any way that Robin or MathBlade are token trans men, because they are not. But it is quite often the case that trans women like myself and Jenny talk over the top of voices of trans men, because there are so many more of us who are out there and outspoken for our rights than there are for the trans men. Not that there are more trans women than trans men, because there isn't. It's just that the trans women tend to be a bit more upfront and vocal about it, and that's probably partly because the rhetoric of TERFs is not 90, but a good 80% aimed at trans women, not trans men. And please,
you guys have a more uphill battle.
Sorry?
Sorry, Robin.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'll let you make your point.
That was just it. My point was just they have more of an uphill battle in general.
Yeah.
I tend to agree and disagree. On some things, I absolutely agree with that, but on other things, I think we as trans guys will have a more uphill battle. It depends.
I think you have a harder life of it with the medical fraternity than we do. I honestly think that is the case. Even though for a lot of trans men, transition can be perhaps a bit more successful than it is for some trans women. But I think it is a lot easier for trans women to find medical professionals that are more helpful than it is for trans men. Only because there are so few of them who actually know the issues that come about for trans men compared to the other way around. And it's a lot easier to find resources for trans women than it is for trans men. Or at least it was.
You can't see me, but I'm nodding.
But when it comes to fighting the bigotry of the gender criticals and that, most of, well, not most, but a large chunk of their hatred is piled onto trans women.
We got a comment from the chat.
Yeah.
Randolph Richardson says J.K. Rowling should have contacted GodlessGranny first. She would have become properly informed, and then there would be no controversy.
Yes.
He's referring to my transgender for beginners video.
What I think is a significant to point out after that comment is
when
that
did you come?
If J.K. Rowling had an open opinion about this, she would have sought out both sides and tried to gain her education. But instead, she went over only to the exclusionary side and talked with exclusionary people, proving herself to be an exclusionary person before she even got started.
She went to the dark side first. Sorry. Star Wars reference.
Yeah, I know, but there's so many things with Star Wars. Let's not. I could rant for a while. Let's stay on topic.
She she highlighted the point the other day with her ignorant statement about John Cleese. John Cleese actually asked a question about the reaction to J.K. Rowling as a question to the community and sought answers. And then J.K. made a post about that, complaining that how she said something and that everyone jumped on her, and John says something, but they're all nice to him. And of course, the difference was John asked a question, she wrote an essay that was being a bitch. That's a very big difference. If you're going to,
so we are allowed to curse.
Yeah. If you're going to write an essay that insists to take people's rights away, expect to be dogpiled on it. If you're going to sit there and ask a question, even if you're asking a question from complete ignorance, expect a bit of understanding.
Yeah, and particularly an honest question coming from an older person who just might have been genuinely ignorant, but doesn't want to be hateful and isn't coming from a place.
And in contrast, JK's tweet that was like so sarcastic with the people who menstruate. What are those called? Whammon? Wow! Really? Really?
Yeah.
Goodness
I mean,
sake.
and she wonders why she got hate thrown back at her for that. And I'm like, you're being hateful. If you're going to be hateful, some people might try and do that with kid gloves. And I think that's exactly what happened the first time round. She basically got kid gloves. But this isn't a first or second or third. The essay is the fourth or fifth time round for JK with doing anti-trans stuff.
I mean, the publicity slip of the misclick. Come on.
Yeah.
Before we get too far away from the medical part that we were just talking about, Navardia's got a question.
Yep.
She said, I had a trans person mention that their specialist told them that the majority of their patients are intersex. Is there any research to support this?
No. No, that's that would probably be Furphy. The only thing I would say to that is there is some good evidence for genetic markers within trans people that point to being trans. There's 12 different markers that seem to be consistent across all trans people, both trans women and trans men. If that holds to be the case, trans would probably be considered a genetic intersex condition anyway at that point. So if you have markers that point towards it and they're consistent and there's a consistent diagnosis from that, it would be labelled as intersex. So a lot of trans people will say straight out that being trans is an intersex condition, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, because you're talking about, we know there's the variance in brain development anyway, and if the brain's not a part of a body, what the fucking hell is it? So if you've got a differing brain development that differs in the development that is more closely resembled to the opposite gender to the one you were assigned at birth, then I think there's a good case for saying that being trans is an intersex condition. However, intersex conditions require a diagnostic tool to discover, and there isn't a set one for being trans. At the moment it's therapy and self-acknowledgement, so self-ID, which is of course the whole bit that the gender critical mobs get upset about. Oh, we can't have self-ID. That's all there is at the moment. There is no medical diagnosis for being trans. There's a medical diagnosis for having dysphoria, but not all trans people have full onset dysphoria. A lot of them just don't. Yeah, and that's the thing. Some have euphoria instead. So when they get affirmed in their correct gender, they feel a lifting of the person that they are. It helps them feel better about themselves, but they don't necessarily have a big detachment from their body. And Robin's probably the best person to explain that.
Yeah, hang on. MathBlade had a comment, and then Granny's got her hand up.
Sorry. Back on your original point. Yes, there are some genetic markers that may help indicate trans, but it's not going to be a one-to-one. Because for context, I'm a biological twin. I'm an identical twin. My sister is not trans. Yeah. I, however, am. So it's not. I don't want to leave the impression that it's always going to be a genetic thing. It may not be. I just want to make sure that was clear. That's all.
See, there's so many different probable causes. A lot of it is thought to be due to the hormone wash of the fetus, but that doesn't even necessarily work when you're one of twins. Same in MathBlade's.
Yeah,
okay, sorry,
I got less food in the womb, so yeah. So twins and genetics and those types of things, it's always a bit funny, like, because I had less food in the womb. I was a preemie. There was all sorts of weird things that blow a lot of genetic cases out of the water. So I didn't want to leave people with an impression of eventually 20 years down the road, we'll have a test for transness.
Yeah. I think it's actually a case of, with it, it's a combination of things. There's a thing to do with the hormonal flush. There's obviously that won't necessarily do that to absolutely everybody who has it. I think there has to be that precondition with the genetics and just a thing of fetal development. We know that most people's gender identities are fairly well established by the age of 2. That's not always the case. Sometimes the gender identity can be almost like you have none up until you hit puberty, and then the rest of that brain development kicks in.
Hang on, Jen, before you get too far in.
Yep. Jenny
Yeah,
has her hand
yeah,
up.
yeah,
I'm sorry,
Jen.
Jen.
Sorry, I did want to
Yeah.
say something. Sorry, Granny. I'm used to calling her Granny Jen. So.
If you get too far into something, then our points become moot because the subject has traveled.
Sorry.
The whole dynamic of the turf position is that trans women are men. Back in my day, back in the 70s, there was no defense for that. There was nothing that we could point to and say, but this, and this say otherwise. Their definition of what we are is from that time and far before, that men have their chromosomes and women have theirs, and never shall the two meet, and they create this binary that is immutable. And what we've learned today is that it's not. We've done things like decode our human genome. We've advanced marvelously in our science and understanding. And their entire position keeps them stuck in the 50s and 60s and earlier, thinking that they're correct, and they're just not. And this is what they use to fool the public, because the public is fairly simple as well, and is always happy to take the simple explanation and claim things like Occam's razors and all these pseudo intellectuals. We have learned much more, and if my personal position is that if the brain has been affected by its chromosomes, that those chromosomes are part of who that person is, and if that person comes out looking one way and being another, being meaning the mind, since this is the organ that's in command, not those. Yeah. Well, for some people.
We can hope.
It would seem to me that we need to really change our definitions of what is male and what is female, and not just rely on just a single marker of a chromosome set, because there's much more beyond the chromosome.
Yes.
So Andrew T put a great comment that kind of goes with this. He said, "Seek ye first to understand, and maybe you won't look like an ignorant transphobic douche nozzle."
I love that quote. Seek ye first to understand, and then you won't look like a transphobic douche nozzle. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
But do you want that on your tombstone? Because I do now.
Some good people in the chat. Hello to all the chat. You are all amazing. I won't say hello to everybody individually because there's so many of you. You realize Julie Jungshot was more than welcome to hop in as well.
I mentioned it, and they're in the chat right now.
I can say that.
Should be. They're upstairs, so I'm assuming they are. So feel free to jump in, honey, if you want to. It's up to you. It's up to you. No pressure.
I think maybe we should get down to it. I think I will read through it. I know we've all made notes, but I think we're all pretty cluey in our head as to which bits we're upset about. So I think I will just read through her whole essay, and we will comment. We'll see what the chat has to say about things, and we can answer questions as we go. So let's start with the very beginning. I'm going to read it out. I'm not going... I'm not going to share it. It's going to be too hard to pop it up as a share on the screen, unfortunately. But there is a link to it down in the description if anybody wants to read along who's watching in the chat and able to. Otherwise, I'm just going to read it out. JK starts...
Let's story time with Auntie Jen.
Yeah, story time with Auntie Jen. Don't go to sleep.
Destroy the story.
It's a horror fucking story.
Yeah, it is. We're going to sit at your feet and be terrified.
Yeah. Okay. So JK starts it out like this. This isn't an easy piece to write. For reasons which will shortly become clear, but I know it's time to explain myself on an issue surrounded by toxicity. I write this without any desire to add to that toxicity. Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah, was there ever a more false thesis statement that you've ever heard? I taught composition for 14 years. That is the most blatantly false thesis statement I've ever heard.
Yeah, well,
you're also going to have to excuse my random coughing of bull and other words.
You can say the words. She's full of shit.
Okay.
I don't want to add to the toxicity, but here's some poison.
Yeah,
it's that. Thank you, Robin.
Cyanide.
So you'll hear me cough every once in a while. It's okay.
Ugh.
It's not COVID. It's the JK disease. It's turfophobia.
Yeah, I've been recovering from something that's not COVID, but COVID-like for a while. So I make it a point to know when I'm actually coughing and say bullshit.
Yeah. All right, so I'll continue on. For people who don't know, last December I tweeted my support for Mayor Forrester, a tax specialist who lost her job for what were deemed transphobic, in quotes, tweets. She took her case to an employment tribunal, asking the judge to rule on whether a philosophical belief that sex is determined by biology is protected by law. Judge Taylor ruled that it wasn't. Now,
okay, first of all, even if you want to be a bigot, which is really dumb, the belief is protected. How you respond in accordance to said belief isn't. And she was being a discriminatory bigot.
There's also a very, very important point in that paragraph. The judge did not decide. Let me get this wording right. The judge was not ruling on the philosophical belief that sex is determined by biology. The judge was ruling on whether or not the firing was appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay? And that is completely different. And here she's taking and boldface lying about what the trial represented just to get people to her side. It is so unethical. Who does this woman think she is?
Yeah, if a judge had ruled on something like that, we wouldn't have as many transphobic people, probably. Because we'd be able to point to it and be like, hey, this is a thing. Nope.
It's like our Supreme Court ruling that we'll get into later. They didn't rule that being transgender was okay and all this other stuff. They ruled that, no, you can't use this law against them.
Yeah.
Or you have to include their rights within this law. They didn't rule on being transgender. They didn't rule on being gay. They ruled on a law. I'm done.
Well, I mean, the judge's conclusion was highly...
Hang on, Jen. Julie's got her hand up.
Sorry, Julie?
Yep. Oh, no, sorry. It was the Civil Rights Act, and they ruled that sex included gay, transgender, pansexual, all of us queer folks in it. So we have rights.
Yeah.
Yay, in America for the first in the US for the first time. Yeah, it's amazing.
I was so
and it is
that ruling. Yeah. It turned out well.
Oh gosh, me too. Yeah, totally. But the only other thing I had to say is I've been a contractor a lot, and that woman wasn't. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, but I don't think she was fired. Her contract was just not renewed.
That's exactly.
And then she decided to take it to the next level. So
she asked why her contract wasn't renewed, and they told her it was because of the transphobic way she was treating other people who were on contract.
Yeah,
but that is totally justifiable in a contract. You can choose not to renew a contract. It's not firing somebody. It is very different. As to as Jen said, the case was really just about whether it was lawful for the people to terminate a contract, which of course it was. But she constantly during the court case was misgendering people, calling out that this was her right and she could do what she wanted in it, and she asked the judge to agree with her on that because of course the defendants for the company were saying, well, she shouldn't be doing that. They're our employees. We want to protect her other employees. So, so the judge's response to her asking for that, I conclude from this and the totality of the evidence that the claimant is absolutist in her view of sex, and it is a core component of her belief that she will refer to the person by the sex she considered appropriate, even if it violates their dignity and or creates an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. That approach is not worthy of respect in a democratic society. That is what the judge said about her during the hearing.
Thanks for him.
And so she not only did she want to try and say her bigotry was grounds for her to lose her contract, she wanted to have permission to be bigoted in the court, and the judge basically shot her down. He said, no, you're not doing this because free speech only goes so far before you start impinging on the rights of other people.
And we see that here in America in constitutional right issues all the time. People do not understand that their rights stop where the next person's rights start, and you cannot decide that I'm going to hate you publicly and demean you publicly because I feel that way. Sorry, doing that infringes on my rights, and you don't get to do that. Privately, have at. Say anything you want. Publicly,
no. And JK herself in this little bit talks about the physical belief that sex is determined by biology and that should be protected by law. Basically, stating her case. The
hang on before we get.
Yep.
Jen, GodlessGranny's got her hand up.
This same issue came up in the United States as far as misgendering people in court goes.
Yeah.
In a very recent ruling where it was that case over the transgender athletes in Connecticut, the track stars.
Yes.
The judge made the ruling that the attorneys for the interveners could not misgender the athletes. And I covered that in a video recently because AIG covered that story. But and they thought it was terrible that the judge ruled this, and it showed bias on his part. Yeah.
Yeah, it's biased to support somebody's human dignity. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was interesting that...
Don't agree with me, you're biased.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There was actually a fairly long list of previous rulings where judges have said the same thing in other courts.
So the point I was getting to from there was that JKR and Mayor Forrester, most of the people who are TERFs or gender criticals, well, basically the same thing, they tend to say that, trans people don't understand or they deny biology. Well, that's an absolute lie because every single trans person I've ever known understands biology very well. Way better than the high school biology that most of these people seem to know.
High school?
Yeah, preschool.
I got a 3 on my AP biology exam. I don't know what that counts for.
But
college credit.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say, it means you got college credit.
Yep.
The thing about gender criticals and J.K. Rowling in particular is they don't understand the difference between sex and gender.
Mm-hmm.
Which you learn in Sociology of Gender 101, if you get to take that.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of sex and gender, I'm putting in the chat my video on the sex and gender.
Let's go watch it. Jay did a brilliant job.
So
that was very good.
It breaks down the differences between biology and sociology and whatnot. So if you have questions, that's a good place to start. And then I've got links in the description from the articles I took the information from. So you can go that way too.
All right, I'm going to hit the next paragraph, unless somebody has anything else to say about our friend Maya. Nope. Okay. So, JK continues. My interest in trans issues predated Mayer's case by almost 2 years, during which I followed the debate around the concept of gender identity closely. I've met trans people and read sundry books, blogs, and articles by trans people, gender specialists, intersex people, psychologists, safeguarding experts, social workers, and doctors, and followed the discourse online and in traditional media. On one level, my interest in this issue had been professional because I'm writing a crime series set in the present day, and my fictional female detective is of an age to be interested in and affected by these issues herself. Yeah, but on another, it's intensely personal, as I'm about to explain. All the time I've been researching and learning, accusations and threats from trans activists have been bubbling in my Twitter timeline. This was initially triggered by a like when I started taking an interest in gender identity and transgender matters. I began screenshotting comments that interested me as a way of reminding myself that I might want to research later. On one occasion, I absentmindedly liked instead of screenshotting. That single like was deemed evidence of wrongthink, and a persistent low level of harassment began. Alright, I might stop there and we'll continue on.
My only comment being bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, you have to click on the like button to like something, and if you want a screenshot on a PC, you actually have to go print screen or use a screenshotting program to capture that bit of the screen. So it's not the same thing at all. And even on a phone, to capture the comment is not the same thing at all. It's not even remotely the same. And anyone who uses Twitter instantly knows that she's full of shit. Yeah.
Or he uses a computer.
Oh, and yeah,
or she was completely drunk.
Oh. Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise.
Oh no, this is me not being in full rage beast mode. Although I might have taken that personally.
It feels like her testing the waters of how transphobic she could be, and then immediately receiving backlash, and still not backing off though.
Yeah.
This is like that moment when you have your kid who's under 5 years old, and they're finally learning what a lie is. And they look at you and say, we don't have to tell the other parents. Yeah, we just don't have to tell them. It's like, how simplistic can you be, lady? Oh my God!
I love her whole concept of she lists all these people that she's taught to. You've taught to trans people. Well, I can't imagine you've taught to very many.
No, and she'll come back to that and be like, but I have a trans woman who's a friend of mine. It's I have a black
I have a gay friend,
right? Yeah. I'll look them up in the new listings.
And gender specialists. Well, I'm pretty sure that JK counts most of her turfy friends as gender specialists.
You're a gender specialist as long as you don't believe gender exists, and only tie it to
I've had the misfortune of talking to the intersex person, the supposed intersex person that I won't say that they're not intersex, but the intersex person who she's actually taught to on Twitter. And they are a spiteful, horrible person who even tears down other intersex people. So if that's where you're getting your ideas about intersex people from, you could choose better there too, JK. Psychologist, if your psychologist isn't an expert in gender theory and dealing with trans people, then you may as well have not talked to a psychologist. But I'm betting you probably didn't talk to any anyway. As safeguarding experts. Yeah, what
does that even mean?
That's turf speak for other turfs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's pretty much what that is. She's
safeguarding like the worst superhero. B-level superhero. Below, Matter Eater lad.
One thing I kind of want to address, maybe this is just unique to my experience, but depending upon how you come out, and how much response another person is able to give out. Sometimes these responses, I'm not saying this is JK's thing because I don't think it is, but sometimes this idea that they're actually being a bigot, you might get this type of response, and knowing a couple of strategies to deal with it may be a good thing that I kind of would want to spend a little bit of time on if we get time later on, because it's going to be a bit of a lengthy conversation. But especially things like on one occasion I absent-mindedly liked instead of screenshotting. That single like was deemed as in a wrong thing, ignoring the BS that is a like instead of a screenshot. Sometimes a lot of cis people get scared that if I misgender someone accidentally, I'm gonna get this level of hate, and that's not the case. If you're actually making an effort to gender us correctly, you're cool. That's not what this is. And I just wanted to say that for any newbies who are cracking their eggs, so to speak, that you may encounter this, or you may encounter a religious person who's never met a trans person, who have always been taught they're wrong, and then dealing with a little bit of backlash. And there's different ways to go to deal with that. And so this is actually kind of common with a lot of people who are not just TERFs. And I wouldn't want you to make an assumption that if someone says, hey, I feel harassed or attacked, don't instantly jump to TERF. As much as TERFs suck, I am not defending JK. This is a fire that needs to be destroyed.
Oh, definitely.
I just want to.
You make a good point. You make an excellent point, because as a cis person, like, I've never, like, as long as I try, all of the trans people in my life, like IRL in my real life, they have, as long as I'm trying, they're cool. Like, they're like, hey, it's cool. I know you don't. I know you met me when I went by a different pronoun. It's fine. No big deal. You know, and that's exactly right. That's all I had to say. Sorry.
Yeah, like it'd be a good 10-20 minutes of that stuff, and we've got a long article to cover, but eventually, if we get time, I'd like to circle back to that one.
Oh, please do.
Quote from the chat real quick. Silk Spectre said, if she had seriously spoken to any trans people or gender specialists, she wouldn't have written it in the first place.
No, exactly.
There you go. I don't want to call no true feminist here, but that's
it's very
difficult not to. It really is.
The other point
I forgot I was muted. She may have spoken with trans people. There's a number of trans people who suck right up to the TERFs and their philosophies, and say some incredibly outrageous things because they have the same ignorance level of human sexuality, in terms of modernity, than do the rest of the TERF population. I'm not going to mention names because I just don't want to get sued. But some of these people are absolute fucking lunatics.
Oh yes,
with their definitions of
head there.
I'll bet you do. You know, so yeah, she could have spoken with transgender people, but I'm not going to even come that close. I'm done.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to bring up was her talking about her writing her detective story, where she had to do research on trans people for it, because she actually had a trans character in her book. Her trans character was every bad trope of trans you could imagine. This trans person was a predator. They were the villain. She portrayed them as being sensual and womanly, right up until she revealed them to be trans, and then totally described every possible way she could that they were more like a man. And
MathBlade has their hand up.
And yep, go.
Oh, I forgot to take my hand down. Sorry.
Okay.
I forgot to take it down.
And then she had one of her good guys in the story threaten the trans person with sexual abuse and getting them put into a male prison where they would be sexually abused more. This is not a good book. It was complained about bitterly when it came out. So her ongoing, and she was torn apart for this book. She really was. She was lambasted by the community, by other people who said it was disgusting what she put in this book. In all honesty, she was called out for her bad like, and the next bit that we're going to read on to. But the bit that started a lot of trans people who, well, not a lot, the trans people who actually were saying horrible things to her, because there were some, was this book. That was the starting point for the trans community to go, hey, no, you're not getting away with this anymore.
Real quick, I wanted to mention, just because that reminded me, there's this one book series that I don't particularly like, and I don't remember the title. It was something Poison Taster, Poison Lover, something like that. But it was written in like the 80s, and the author clearly didn't really know what trans people were and still wrote a decently successful F to M trans character. And there were like a couple mistakes, but it was generally really good.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible that J.K. Rowling so much later just can't even get it as much as this person who from a while ago when being trans was barely a thing.
Yeah, as long as you're coming forward with an honest representation of effort, mistakes can be overlooked.
Yeah.
It's
And the worst thing this person did was refer to the character as female when talking about them in the past, which is a mistake a lot of people make.
No, I've done that.
All right. Shall we move
I'm
on
not
to
proud of
next
it,
bit?
but I've done it.
Because
Yes, please.
otherwise we're not going to get anywhere. So, all right. JK then goes on with, months later, I compounded my accidental light crime by following Magdalene Burns on Twitter. Magdalene was an immensely brave young feminist and lesbian who was dying of an aggressive brain tumor. I followed her because I wanted to contact her directly, which I succeeded in doing. However, as Magdalene was a great believer in the importance of biological sex and didn't believe lesbians should be called bigots for not dating trans women with penises, dots were joined in the heads of Twitter trans activists and the level of social media abuse increased. So much wrong with that paragraph. Yes, go Julie.
Sorry, just what that very clearly states to me is the problem with this whole paper. The reason that if this were a paper submitted to me back when I was a professor, it would have gotten a very low grade. And it's because the writer clearly does not understand her subject, meaning J.K. Rowling does not think that trans women are women.
No, she doesn't.
And that's bullshit. Yeah, and I know it's obvious, and I know, like, to most of us, we're like, but why? How do you not? But that is the thing. And you're going to find that point. Every toxic moment in this article comes back to that. She thinks trans women are men who want to prey on women.
Exactly.
Because she doesn't see trans women as women.
Yeah.
I'm finished.
And it's very telling in here how she talks about the tragedy of Magdalene Burns' brain tumor and how she's so brave and everything. Yeah, people aren't brave when they deal with chronic disease. They can be brave in the face of it, but you deal with chronic disease because you have no choice. And it's not about bravery. It truly isn't. But that aside, I'm very sorry for what happened with Magdalene Burns. You know, it is dreadful. Nobody deserves to die from something like that. However, that doesn't forgive all the things that Magdalene Burns said and done to try to remove the rights of trans people, the abuses she held at trans people. She was a horrible person. She died a dreadful death. And commiserations to her family, and I'm sorry she went through that, but she was a horrible person. And this was the person that JK went to get her information about trans people. Like, what?
Well, it's not just that. Religious bigots also tend to, because I'm from the South and I've had to deal with a lot of different religious bigots, so bear with me. Religious bigots will also kind of do this thing of, look at this person. They want to try to create a connection with empathy. Theremin
Ma-
trees
ma-
great.
MathBlade, your volume is
Yeah, you-
is losing.
Oh,
Need-
sorry. Is that better?
Yep, that's much better.
Yes.
Anyway, this great YouTuber, Theremin Trees, if you get a chance, look him up, describes some of the different ways of manipulation that happens, and this article hits a lot of them. And especially when she tries to bring up the brain cancer is completely irrelevant to the point. It's a manipulation tactic to get you to empathize with the person. And a lot of this article actually tries to get you to focus on something that's not the actual cause. And that sort of manipulation is something that new eggs or allies need to be aware of what's going on, is that people frame their arguments, whether incorrect or correct, we have to build a frame for it and invite people in, and you have to pay attention to what that frame is. You can't just say, oh, I don't frame my stuff. You do, you just may not realize it. Everybody does it.
No, that's very true. And I mean, the fact that she says... Sorry?
I got a comment from the chat.
Okay.
Randolph says, it's sad that she chose the passive bigotry. She needs Dumbledore's wisdom.
Right?
Isn't Dumbledore just the prime example of how JK will pander to fans and try to use emotional things to get what she wants out of things? I mean, there is absolutely zero evidence in any of the Harry Potter books that Dumbledore is gay.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a little bit of queer theory text that maybe you could read into a couple of the later books, and I've read them all more than once. But it's you have to know. You basically already have to know that
At least
when they
it's
were
better than
making the
when-
movies, they thought about putting in a female love interest for Dumbledore, and she was like, "Don't do that." And if you don't know that going in, you might not see it. So
at least it's better than when she tried to claim that she never wrote that Hermione wasn't black, when she did, in fact, describe her skin as pale.
Yeah, there you go.
But
Thank you.
that's how JK does things. She makes up headcanon. The funniest thing is when you talk to people who are involved in some of the fanfiction things, the number of things that JK... There were a few fanfictions. JK used to be totally against fanfiction and used to try to shut people down who wrote fanfiction. There's a few fanfiction stories that JK shut down, that later ideas that were in those fanfictions appeared in her later books.
Yeah, I mean, come on, the whatever it was called, the one that she released as a play and that nobody really liked that much, that was a fan fiction. That was just straight up
it was a fanfiction.
terrible self-insert fan.
She didn't write it at all. It was fanfiction.
So that seems hypocritical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she got all the money for it.
Well, yeah. So I mean, her whole things of for dating trans women with penises. You know, it's so yeah, it's like, yeah, could you be any more cringe? And by the way, that whole thing of didn't believe that lesbians should be called bigots for dating trans women with penises. There are very, very, very few trans people who will actually say that it is bigoted to have a preference based on genitalia. Very, very few. In fact, there was one actually in our community, and I won't mention her name, but if people want to find out, I did a video about her, and I called Bigotry in the Minority, and I called her out on it, because you can't say that. It's not fair. People have preferences. People have physical preferences all the time. It's not bigotry. It's just what they like. And to say that people are bigoted because they won't date a trans woman who's, say, pre-op is just ridiculous. That is nuts. Now, if you're going to give shit to that trans woman because she's, for whatever reason, then you're a fucking bigot. But not dating them? No. No. You can go away with that.
As an ace person, I don't find anything attractive. So does that make me a bigot?
See, this is the problem with that kind of thing.
I mean, I'm also an ace, but I would date anyone. So I still find you attractive. It's
There's
just
still there's romantic things, and then there's sexual things. Sometimes they don't line up. Sometimes they do. Like my
I see,
roommates are
Julie.
ace. They both like each other romantically. Just they don't have sex.
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I hope I can find an ace partner. I swear.
Yeah, see?
I just want someone to cuddle with and watch movies.
Aw,
Isn't that what everybody wants, though? I mean, I
right?
like
ace
sex,
partner?
but I like
Well,
sex, but I
no.
would much rather do the whole cuddling and watch a movie or snuggle up together in bed and keep each other warm than
There's the whole
have
head
the
pats
sex all
me.
the time. Yeah, hold me. That's what I want. Sorry. Now we've done our dating app for the night. Yes, Julie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really
I'm single,
quickly.
ladies and gentlemen. Sorry.
There you go. No, it's good. Really quickly, I just feel the need to say, like, when I said no about an ace partner, it's because I really like sex. And it's really important to me.
That's
But
asexual.
so you do not have to. Never do anything you don't want to do. I just want to lay that out there. Like it's not. Yeah. And now I'm going to stop talking before I embarrass myself further.
Well, there's a question in the chat. It says,
Yep.
what is ace?
Asexual.
It's asexual.
And not into anyone. And there's a spectrum because some ace people still enjoy sex, just not necessarily like the idea of doing it with another person, and some just are completely against having any at all, which is where I fall. But yeah, it's a spectrum. It's a fun spectrum.
Yeah. Whereas I'm definitely not.
And there are gay ace people, there are straight ace people, there are transgender ace people. It covers the spectrum.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it covers all genders and orientations for sure.
Shall I read on?
Please.
Go
Sorry.
for it.
Alright, she continues. I mentioned all this to explain that I knew perfectly well what was going to happen when I supported Maya. I must have been on my 4th or 5th cancellation by then. I expected the threats of violence, to be told I was literally killing trans people with my hate, to be called cunt and bitch, and of course for my books to be burned, although one particularly abusive man told me he'd composted them. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm betting the particularly abusive man she's talking about was actually a trans woman. Knowing her thing, but I can't know that for sure. But the literally killing trans people, there was probably a few people who said that to her, but I think her thing of threats of violence and stuff like that there is a thing to be said here. There are some trans women who are so frustrated because of the abuse and violence they get from crap like this that JK does, that they will respond in kind. That does happen. There are also plenty of gender criticals who create sock accounts to create false images of trans people doing stuff like this to make trans people look bad. That happens as well. So there's a mixture there. Now, I don't condone anybody who offered threats of violence or whatever. But telling her you're literally killing trans people by your hate is not an act of violence, JK. Telling you that you're being a bitch or a cunt over this is not an act of violence. It is people expressing their aggravation and upset at what you're doing to them because you are attacking other people's rights and you are misgendering and dehumanizing trans people, so you can expect some pushback. Anyone else?
I was gonna add on to that yes, that statement about literally killing trans people with hate. Yes, that is a thing, because depending upon, especially if you're a new trans person, which is an egg, if you heard me use that slang before, probably should have defined it. If the first thing you see is a person you looked up to doing stuff like what J.K. Rowling is doing, it can create a huge schism. Like, because I was religious and ever since slowly faded away from it, but that idea of how I had a woman should be in my head, I was born female, and that's why I said that. I was assigned female at birth, rather. So that schism is very difficult to get over, depending on how you were raised and how you were brought up. So yeah, you may be killing people with that rhetoric. Can I prove it? No, but your words have impact to other people than your intended audience.
Yeah.
And I would just like to mention, why is she so offended over someone composting her books? That seems like a really weird thing to be like, a particularly abusive man. It's compost.
Thank you.
Still gave you money.
Like, thank you, Robin, because I would be offended at the burning of books. I'm a bibliophile. I'm generally offended at the burning of any book, but oh my god, composting? That's just a responsible way to get rid of any paper product that you don't need anymore.
Yeah, it's like, thanks for giving back to the environment.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's a way better system than burning it. I really like the person for doing that. No, she's got lots of personal issues, I think.
She probably resented the fact that they turned her book into basically a pile of shit.
I mean, I was going to say it kind of is a pile of shit. It depends which book. If they composted her detective series, they turned a pile of shit into more shit. I don't necessarily feel the same way about Harry Potter. For the record, I actually like the Harry Potter books. Hate the author, love the books. Very simple. You can do that. You can do both. Don't think that you have to burn the books just because JK's. But if you need to buy more books, go buy them secondhand. Who had their hand up first?
I do. Well, I don't know. I did. I don't know if it was first.
Jen, you haven't spoken for a bit. And then Julie.
On her detective series, what was the name of the person she pseudonymed, or the pseudonym she used as author?
It was some gay basher. I forget what her name was.
Yes, I can't remember what his name was either. But yeah, she took the name of a
Galbraith.
Galbraith.
Yeah, that was it. Robert Galbraith.
Would that be that Robert Galbraith, the guy who kind of invented conversion therapy for gay people?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that hate-filled guy. Okay, just checking.
So you write a book that has a trans person that you put in as your villain, and you choose your pseudonym for the name of the person who writes that book as the father of conversion therapy. Dog whistling at all?
I never even heard of this book until today. I did not know this was a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
It does not exist. It's going to be nuked. It is bad. It is horrible. Disgusting.
You were going to say, Julie?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just as I'm a technical writer for a living, but both of my degrees are in creative writing. And one thing you learn very quickly when you're majoring in creative writing and in literature is that writers are not saints. Just because you can string words together artfully does not mean you're a good person. And I would cite Lewis Carroll. I love Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, but guys, he was most likely a pedophile and it's gross. So
we can debate that.
I'm sorry. Well,
there's debate.
It's so gross. Look at some of his photography. Anyway, point is, so I just kind of wanted to touch on Jen's thing about how you can love the Harry Potter books. I mean, one of my nephews had ADHD, and literally those books are what made him fall in love with reading. And that was such a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, he read The Goblet of Fire in 2 days. It's an 800-page book, and he read it in 2 days. So I will be forever grateful for that, but I will also I will forever feel betrayed by all of this, because and the name she chose, and also she likes to say she's such a great feminist, but she noticed she didn't publish under a feminine name. She published under J.K. Rowling and then under that horrible name because she was afraid that if she used a woman's name, she might not get picked up by a publishing house.
It's especially weird with the second one, since she'd already written with the detective thing, because she'd already written Harry Potter.
Thank you.
We all know who you are.
Yeah, she was already a best-selling author. She could have coasted on the name alone.
She knew damn well that what she was writing was going to be inflammatory and panned badly if she put her name on it to write that kind of screed. She knew exactly what she was doing. She's an intelligent woman.
So hang on, 2 things real quick. One, I got a comment from the chat. The Lone Wanderer says, I'm having a very difficult time separating JK from her work. I love the book, but she hurts me. And then MathBlade's got their hand up.
So I'm going to do something that might be very bad. Does anybody mind if I destroy their love for Harry Potter?
Please.
No, it's all right, especially if we're talking
I
about
prefer
the last
Tamora
book.
Pierce. The Circle of Magic is better in every way.
Okay. There are different theories going out online that people who know more about Harry Potter than I do, that a lot of this is also a very racist screed, which is one of the reasons she actually brought this up right now. This is a theory. Keep that in mind. But the Irish guy, very representative of IRA, and he's the only one. There are very few to limited no African American representation, depending on interpretation.
Well, you wouldn't have African American representation because it's set in the UK.
Because it's in the UK. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm using an American term.
You wouldn't have Black British.
You wouldn't have Black British
representation.
Yeah. Thank you. You also have a Asian person who's literally Cho Chang is the name, and literally figure out where that goes, because I will not say some of that stuff on stream. But there's a lot of hints towards JK potentially being racist, and that it may be just a conservative blar hit piece on anything that is not white cis people.
I don't know about that. I've seen arguments from both sides, and it really doesn't seem like she was racist intentionally. Maybe a little intentionally, but I don't think she was trying with the Cho Chang thing.
I think it's really easy to read into anything.
Hang on, Jen. Sorry. Jenny was talking.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to read into anything and take it in the direction you want. I think we have to be very careful when we're analyzing something like Harry Potter. And I say that never having read a single word in any Harry Potter book. Okay, it's just not the kind of thing I'm interested in.
Yeah.
The other point I wanted to make with off of what Julie said is, yeah, there's going to be people that continue to buy Harry Potter and want to read it, and that's fine and good. Don't buy a new copy. Buy a used copy so the bitch don't get your money.
Agreed.
And wait till the movies, if they make any more, come out on the streaming service you're already paying for. And don't go watch them in the cinema. Don't give her money.
You know, one of the few places I say, go ahead, pirate a book.
Steal this book. It's fine.
Yeah, get it as a free audio book on audio.
Marrow says, trusted turf to publish as a man.
Right?
And then
what she says later about trans people in this article.
And then the Lone Wanderer also says, don't y'all just want to take this primitive and just punch her in her taco?
Oh! Oh! Okay. I think I'll read on.
Lone Wanderer for comment of the night.
Yep.
Better step up your game there, doorknob head.
Alright, I'm going to read on, okay?
Please do.
What I didn't expect in the aftermath of my cancellation was the avalanche of emails and letters that came showering down upon me, the overwhelming majority of which were positive, grateful, and supportive. I'll read those words in the right order. I love my dyslexia. They came from a cross-section of kind, empathic, and intelligent people, some of them working in fields dealing with gender dysphoria and trans people. They're all deeply concerned about the way a socio-political concept is influencing politics, medical practicing, and safeguarding. They're worried about the dangers to young people, gay people, and about the erosion of women's and girls' rights. Above all, they're worried about a climate of fear that serves nobody, least of all trans youth, well. This entire paragraph is one complete dog whistle.
It's not a dog whistle. It's a, hey, it's okay to be a bigot. There's other people with you. It's a recruitment ad. It's not a dog whistle. A dog whistle is subtle. This ain't subtle.
Well, that's true.
Even the trans people will support you hating on them.
Yeah. Well, it's even when she says, like, when she brings up the term TERF and says, "And I didn't know what that meant, and why? And you may not. Why should you?" It's like, what? What?
It's
I know
it's
that-
all
I'm
about
sorry.
framing. It's all about framing, and she's trying to frame herself as a holy angel when she's just not.
Yeah.
Well, she's got two attempts in trying to frame herself here. One as a victim and one as the holy angel.
Mhm.
And I have a lot to say about that when you get to the victim
Me
bit. I
too.
know you do too, Jen.
Um,
I'm sorry. I'm trying to calm down.
yeah, I mean, yeah, she'll get letters that are positive and good. She also has a press manager who probably selectively gives her the letters to read. I doubt she reads everything that is sent to her. So, yeah, of course she's going to get a majority of supportive stuff sent to her in letters and emails. Because I guarantee you she doesn't read all her own emails. There is no way. No one as popular as her would read all their own emails. Not public ones, anyway. Some of them working in fields dealing with gender dysphoria and trans people. Yes, I'm guessing none of those people were professional people who actually professionally deal with trans people, and they're all people like Magdalene Burns, who are bigots, who their idea of working with trans people is trying to erode trans rights.
Exactly. That's you just have to bring the definition out, and it includes a whole bunch of really nasty folks.
Which is why she doesn't name anybody. She doesn't cite any references at all in her entire essay. I mean, for that alone, I would downmark her. Sorry?
Well, everything she writes is completely devoid of citations.
Yes.
There's one citation, but it's flawed, and I've actually got that in my notes. But go ahead.
Okay, well, we'll get to that.
Oh, you would so get an A in my class, MathBlade. If I still talk, which I don't, but go on.
Alright, I will read on to the next bit because I think we've kind of covered this. But, I mean, she's got false... I mean, we're worried about dangers to young people, gay people. How does talking about trans people have anything to do with gay people apart from the fact that some trans people are gay? This is not... What she's alluding at there is she's trying to say that there are... some of these trans people are actually just gay people and they're a bit more confused. That's what she's trying to say.
Oh yeah, she goes into that more later, I think.
She does, yes.
Yeah, she does.
And I know Jenny has something to say about that.
How do trans people erode women's and girls' rights? This is a bit that I've always asked them to explain. How do trans people erode women's and girls' rights? Trans women are women. Young trans girls are trans girls.
That's actually a dog... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I was about to say, and trans men are men. Same thing. And non-binary people are non-binary. Get it? Simple.
It's actually a dog whistle because a lot of TERF underneath says that trans men are actually breaking away from true femininity and they're betraying the group of feminists by transitioning into being men. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Betraying the sisterhood by transitioning. And that's a dog whistle to that. That is a very large dog whistle of, no, you're just gay. Don't come out as a trans guy. Because I came out as gay before I came out as a trans guy. And then see that, I'm like, that's a fucking dog whistle.
Yeah,
and
also
I cursed again, sorry.
Also just the rhetoric, like you mentioned, of just, you're trying to run away from the hardships of being a woman. No.
Yeah.
And even if that were true, that means that I'm running towards the hardships of being a woman, other than menstruation.
Yeah.
Yep.
You still have periods, though. They just don't have other things.
Well, not bad subject. I won't touch that one.
I'm just saying.
No, don't go into it.
Okay. I won't.
You know, which is actually true. Are we doing it as a reason? Am I choosing to live as a woman because I want problems? No. I get problems for being a woman because I'm a woman.
Yes.
Society doesn't give a fuck whether I'm trans or not. They're going to treat me like shit no matter what.
And may I just say, as somebody who lives in the South, I live in Tennessee. Y'all know this. I live in Memphis. And coming out as gay here is hard enough. And I live in a blue dot in a very red state. Like, Memphis is pretty cool. We have a whole, we've got a whole gay, area in town, in Midtown, and it's awesome. And we've got Out Memphis, and we have Rainbow Kids, and we've got all these resources for people who are literally like kicked out on the streets by their parents for coming out as gay. Now, take that and multiply it by several orders of magnitude if you want to say you're trans, right? Or I'm sorry, not want to. If you are trans and you say you're trans, her assertion that people might try to avoid homophobia by transitioning is absurd.
It's like
on its face.
You've got this level of crap you're going to get from society for being gay. And then you've got this level of crap that you're going to get from society for being trans. There is no benefit to being trans over being gay. Not
also, I just wanted to...
Yeah,
I always fall back. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Before the topic moves, I also just wanted to mention, I actually kind of run into more problems after transitioning, mostly just because I'm generally weak and have a lot of traits that are more traditionally feminine, and now I just have to deal with that as, like, not as okay, like saying how much I say like, and so I'm honestly also, I'm not running away from the problems of being a woman, I'm giving myself more problems by being a more feminine guy.
Fair.
I'm nodding in support. I don't know what that's like, but
I always fall back to the line I heard from my own mother when I came out one October evening, and I told her I was trans, and after she recovered from almost passing out, she said to me, "Why couldn't you have just been gay?"
And that is the normal statement that most parents do. I mean,
oh yeah,
the TERFs contradict themselves in their fight against trans kids by trying to convince parents to force their kids to be gay rather than to be trans because they'll have an easier life of it. And I'm like, oh, you've just said that people go to no. That's it. Because it's all contradiction in there. For them, there's no set narrative apart from the hate trans people.
I'm not just pipe in here real quick. I'm not sure if you had a time frame on what you want to run now, but just to give it an update, we're at an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm going to read through on the next couple of bits kind of quickly, or else we're not getting anywhere because we are taking a long time to talk through these points. I'll continue on. I'll probably read through a couple of paragraphs and then we can talk about it. I stepped back from Twitter for many months, both before and after tweeting support for Maya, because I knew I was doing nothing good for my mental health. I only returned because I wanted to share a children's book during the pandemic. Immediately, activists who clearly believed themselves to be the good, kind, and progressive people swarmed back into my timeline, assuming a right to police my speech. Accused me of hatred and called me misogynistic slurs, and above all, as every woman involved in this debate will know, TERF.
Dun dun dun.
And then she goes on to explain what TERF is. So, the TERF was an acronym. Go.
Didn't she accidentally tweet, like, part of a really, really turfy article in some kid's fan art?
Yes, that's exactly why she got jumped back on. She deleted that tweet and redid the tweet, but that's exactly why she got jumped on. Everyone was... Yeah. I didn't even know she'd come back online.
She didn't get jumped on for liking a children's book. She got jumped on for somehow, once again, accidentally managing to copy-paste a bunch of transphobic stuff into some kid's fan art. And she got jumped on
because she tweeted that at the freaking kid. And it was a horrible thing. There are people took snapshots of it before she deleted it. But yeah, I mean, come on, JK. It was a tweet that you'd done like 8 months previously, and you copy and pasted it into this brand new tweet. You can't tell me it was entirely by accident. I mean, I've mistweeted by accident before too, but When you do that, you
Oh,
tend
no,
to apologize for it. She didn't apologize. She deleted, then wondered why people gave a shit. And then she doubled down. I think everybody around here knows what TERF means. It's an acronym that means Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. They named themselves that. They will try to say they are called that by trans activists. Well, they are, but they named themselves that. They call it a slur
That
now
name-
because they get called it in that way because it's become a slur because of the way they behave, not because
Because they're hateful.
That label is traceable back to the 70s and 60s.
Yep. Yep. The actual person who coined it owned up to it, and they actually stopped being a TERF herself. And if you want to talk about the violence in it, talk to somebody like Amy Dreyfus, who was part of the TERF movement and a radical feminist who said all this mantra, got out of it, and then received death threats from TERFs who are currently in it.
Oh, though also, you might want to mention the last sentence of the paragraph that explains trans exclusionary radical feminists, because that is a trip.
I wasn't going to read the whole paragraph because it is. Did you want to read it, Robin?
Well, hang on. Before you read that, Mero says she's good at gaslighting as Trump is.
Yeah. All right, I'll let Robin read this.
Yeah, that last sentence is beautiful. Ironically, radical feminists aren't even trans exclusionary. They include trans men in their feminism because they were born women.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to hit that line if Robin wasn't, but yeah, we are not women. Like, no. Just fuck no. I'm sorry.
And her whole Marks and Spencer thing, she makes an example of Marks and Spencer because obviously trans women are allowed to use the women's changing rooms. It's the same as using the women's toilet and everything. These are rights that trans people have had for more than 20 years in some places. It's not
40,
a new
50.
thing. Yeah, it's not a new thing. But she made this thing about, this old lady who vowed to never visit Marks and Spencer again because they're allowing any man who says they're a woman to use a women's... man who says they're a woman. Are you fucking kidding me, are you, JK? This is the stuff that we get pissed off about because you are just saying now that trans women are men. This is transphobia. It's also homophobia, actually, because they're all very closely related. And it just comes down to you being a bigot, basically.
I think it's funny that throughout this paragraph, it almost seems like she has more problems with people including the word feminism in TERF than she does with the trans exclusionary part. She's like, some of these TERFs aren't feminists. Wow. Good for them.
I think that's kind of her. This is kind of my opinion. Let me preface this in my opinion. I don't think J.K. Rowling is a feminist. I think that's her accidentally doing a slip of the tongue, going, I'm just trans exclusionary. I'm not a feminist.
Yeah, I mean, we can call you a bigot if you'd prefer that over TERF. We have plenty of other words.
Well, she's certainly binary.
Yeah.
I think it's stuck in the off position, just saying.
I got two things real quick. Randolph Richardson says, perhaps if I alluded to the wisdom of Gandalf earlier, it would have been a much better consideration than the wisdom of Dumbledore. And I posted a link in the chat from the Lone Wanderer. It's a funny take on what J.K. Rowling is up to now. So they
people can go and check that out afterwards.
Yeah, they check the links in the description.
All right, we'll quickly do the next.
I think that's all I got right now.
We'll quickly do the next bit, which is also her talking about TERF-free. The first bit. But accusations of TERF-free have been sufficient to intimidate many people, institutions, and organisations I once admired who are cowering before the tactics of the playground. No, they're not cowering. They are agreeing with trans people. They are being supportive of trans people, and they are calling you out for being a bigot. And that's why you're being called transphobic. So, yeah. And that's why they say you're hating trans people. Sorry? Julie? Yeah.
Go ahead, Julie.
Oh, thanks. No, I wanted to make sure that Robin and MathBlade got to speak first as trans men, because that was more important than representatively. That was more important than what I had to say. But I also want to say, I wonder if she even knows that people like my spouse exist. Like, does she know that non-binary people exist? Because she doesn't even get into that. And to get to the feminist angle, like I'm an old school feminist for me, and I hate even having to preface that with "for me," but feminism has always been about equality for all genders. That's the point. So it doesn't leave out men. It doesn't leave out non-binary people. It doesn't leave out third genders, or it doesn't leave out anyone. That is the point of it, is that we all see the world from different views, but those views are valid as long as they comport with reality, right? So it's very frustrating to me that, like, I'll watch my partner, well, if we have to go out for something, depending on where we're going and who we're going to see and all of that, I watch them choose their clothing very specifically, and it's not necessarily what they want to wear. It's what they feel like they have to wear to be socially acceptable in that moment. And that, it hurts my heart. I hate watching that. I want them to be able to be them. And people like J.K. Rowling, who are in the public eye and say this kind of shit, make it that much harder. And I'm finished. Sorry, rant over. I'm just...
I think the last paragraph of this paragraph, the last sentence of this paragraph is probably the bit that really highlights some of her attitude, because she starts it. Speaking as a biological woman.
Oh, fuck off!
A lot of people in positions of power really need to grow a pair, then in brackets, which is doubtless literally possible according to the kind of people who argue that clownfish prove humans aren't a dimorphic species. Yeah, go, Julie. Go.
No, I'm sorry. I know Marrow is freaking out in the chat right now, so whatever she's saying is more accurate than what I'm going to say. But oh my gosh.
I actually wish Mary could be in here, because I would love to hear what she has to say at the moment.
I have something for this.
I do.
For this.
Oh,
hang on.
Julie, could you diagram that sentence, please?
No, I can't. I'm sorry. I cannot. I just
hang on. MathBlade's got something.
Go ahead, MathBlade.
I don't grow my pear. I get it shipped from Amazon. You can.
Also, I'd like to highlight the statement that she said before that, just real quick, just because they'll say you're transphobic. They'll say you hate trans people. What's next? They'll say you've got fleas.
Yeah, like, what the fuck?
What?
Thank you. It's like the definition of a non sequitur, right?
It really
and
is.
it's like, are you saying that trans people don't exist, or are you saying that they do exist, but
it's
have fleas? Please? What? That you're not transphobic? Are you saying you're not excluding them? Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to back up to something a bit ago that Julie was talking about, with your spouse being non-binary. As I came to understand things, non-binary is the last thing that I understood. For me, it was easier to understand trans than non-binary.
Yeah.
Sure.
Even for trans people, that can be the case.
Certainly.
Jen and I, as older trans people, when we were first confronted with non-binary people, like, what the fuck? I don't get this.
It made complete sense to me, but that's their story to tell and not mine. So I don't want to speak out of turn, I guess. I just will say it made complete sense to me. When they came out to me as non-binary, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you want a glass of wine? Like, that was basically my reaction.
This last sentence, I think it's exactly everything that Jen said. But for me, it's also kind of indicative that did she really talk to intersex people? Because if she had, she would not be making this claim that we supposedly are trying to prove that people are not dimorphic, or are dimorphic, that according to her we're not. We're way beyond dimorphic. It is a spectrum. It is a continuum. There are errors that occur that maybe aren't actually errors, that make people all kinds of different things sexually between their genital structure and their mental structure. And if she can't accept that because she is too ignorant or bigoted to take the time to listen to the people who understand this stuff, instead of reject her third grade knowledge, I just have no time for her, none whatsoever.
So I've got a couple things from the chat, and then I want to say something here real quick.
Yeah.
Junk Shop Library says, no easier way to minimize your opponent than characterizing their argument as tactics of the playground. And I'm not sure how to pronounce this. It's Ereshkigal Ray. I probably butchered that real bad, but it says it feels like JK and other TERFs are trying to pigeonhole people into either anti-trans or anti-women, that if they don't hate trans folk, then they must hate women.
Mm.
What I want to say
about framing,
I've mentioned this before, but this is a good time with the panel and who we got on there. A little over a year ago, I was in a state of mind where it was like there are no, you're male or female, that's it. And I was dead set on it. I mean, I've had arguments with my kids and with my wife about it. But coming into this community, meeting Jen and meeting Granny Jen and even a bunch of other people and asking questions and doing the research, I have changed my mind. I'm 100%. They'll tell you I'm a huge supporter of the community now. And that's just because I talk to the right people. I talk to people that are going through these things, the trans women, the trans men, the non-binaries, the aces, in intersex. I've talked to them all, people in that, and I have done the actual research, and it has changed my point of view. So for her to come into this and go, well, I've talked to these people, you didn't talk to the people you need to talk to. Mm-hmm. If you talk to the people you need to talk to, you would understand that's not the case. You're looking at it completely wrong. And if you talk to the right people, you're going to change your mind. Unless you're just 100%, not willing to change, then there's no help for you.
Yeah, but thanks for being man enough to listen, because a lot of times people get like flack, especially some guys, for actually listening to people. Like, no, that is man enough. That's manning up and listening, man. So, thanks.
I agree. I agree, MathBlade, absolutely.
Yeah, Raven did make just because I want to stay on the subject real quick before we move over. Raven made my kids have a friend. His name is Eddie. He's going lovely. Through the train, and I'm a huge supporter of Eddie, even when Eddie's father wasn't. So I mean, we brought Jen's talked to Eddie, Lavender Lady's talked to Eddie. Yeah, MathBlade's talked to Eddie too. So it's. So I'm a huge supporter, but I don't want to make this about me. We want to get back into one thing, but I just wanted to say that if you talk to the right people, your minds will be changed. You just got to talk to the right one. But I do have a couple more comments before we move in.
Yep.
Tria says, I am tired of people claiming to have my best interest in mind that don't ask me and hurt my trans and non-binary sibs. I have the anti-trans and anti-woman framing. And then that I did it again.
The have was supposed to be hate, by the way.
What's that?
The have was supposed to be hate, so it should say I hate.
Yeah, that's yeah. I after I read, I'm like, that's not what Tria said. Just Ray says she spoke to those and knew would confirm her bias. Yep, she only spoke to the ones that would confirm what her bias was. So, and I'm out.
All right.
Love you, Jay.
I'm going to try and skip through a lot of the rest of the essay really quickly so we can get to the nitty-gritty points, because even though we've been harping on at the beginning here, because there's so much of it, there are way more important points further down. So I'm going to bring them out in points. If I've missed something somebody wants, please drag back to it like Robin did earlier. I'm going to move down to where she's talking about her her charity. She goes, firstly, I have a charitable trust that focuses on alleviating social deprivation in Scotland with a particular emphasis on women and children. Among other things, this trust supports female prisoners and survivors of domestic violence and abuse. I also fund medical research into domestic disease, which behaves differently in men and women. It's clear to me for a while that the new trans activism is having, or is likely to have, if all demands are met, a significant impact on many of the causes I support, because it's pushing to erode the legal definition of sex. Okay, again, she's painting herself as an angel here, but the charity that she does is with Lady Winthrop, I think is her name. I'm sorry, I forget it. I really want to forget it. Who actively voted and is pushing for the removal of gay marriage rights in the UK.
Wow.
So her choice, the person, is somebody who's completely bigoted and an arsehole. And I believe Jen actually said a whole heap of things to her today.
Just a couple words.
Yeah, just a couple of words.
Oh, they were good words.
My only point on this one is the demands of trans people. I think our only demands are pretty much just leave us alone and let us do what we want to do with our bodies.
Right.
And give us access to the areas that are those for our gender.
Basically, just leave us alone.
That's it. And we will all concede, I think, that the sports issue is a special case, because sports is always a special case, and none of us are that pig-headed and ignorant over it. Although my stance on the sports issues, I don't give a shit what you do with elite sports. But if you stop trans people from competing, from experiencing team sports and as the gender that they are, then that's bigoted in my mind. Because
I agree.
At the social level of sports, it doesn't matter even if there is a small advantage, especially in team sports, which is where people are going to care about this. So, for example, I've played a lot of netball. Now I'm pretty sure I don't have an advantage. Maybe a small height one. I'm 5'8", but I'm also intersex, so I had both testosterone and estrogen when I was a teenager. So
You're intersex. Why couldn't you have just been gay?
Yeah. Oh, I love you, Jen. I love you. That's brilliant. So, there's very much no, somebody else take over. I've lost it. Thanks, Jen.
I will say, as for trans people in sports, okay, trans people in sports, honestly, if you can keep up and you can do the sport, you should be allowed to. It's, again, this goes back to feminism for me. It's like, I don't care. It's none of my business, frankly, what is not or is in your pants. That's none of my business. If you can compete, go compete.
Yeah.
Do your thing. Enjoy. I don't care.
And I know I brought up the
Same
sports,
argument was made about black people, and it's still completely bullshit. But that's my 2
It is
cents.
a bullshit argument, because sports is inherently unfair. If you actually care about fairness in sports, we would have handicaps in all sports, so that everybody could compete on an even playing field. But nobody actually gives a shit about an even playing field. So the arguments are ridiculous at the base level. But in all honesty, elite sports, not my care. Most trans people will never be good enough to compete at the elite level. Most trans women, there will be very few trans women who can ever get there, so they're not going to have a significant impact. I don't see how it matters in any way, shape, or form. But what does matter is inclusion at the lower level. Inclusion for teen trans people, especially at a time in your life when you're trying to find yourself and you need that outlet. You need to be able to have that because doing sport helps with depression, and being dysphoric, it promotes depression. So it's a good thing to be able to do sport, and telling trans people you can't do it, or if you're a trans woman you have to go and do all your sport with the guys, that's wrong, and very wrong. So, But having said that, I think we'll stay off the sport. Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah. But having said that, I think we'll stay off the sport. Yeah.
Yeah, I real quick, Doorknob Head says netball sounds posh. Is that served with iced tea on a clay surface?
Think basketball,
And then,
but faster. and no dribbling.
Bested Freya says you're a trans. Talking to you, Jen. Says, Jen's little corner. You're a trans. Wow, you look so comfortable in your current skin. I'm thinking you might have trouble passing as a male.
Yeah, I don't pass as a male.
I can't even. And now, granted, Jen, I met you, very recently, maybe about not even a year ago. I can't imagine you as a
there's two
as a
people
man.
on this
Is that
panel
weird?
There are two people on this panel who've seen pictures of me in high school. I'm pretty sure I sent one to Jen, and I'm pretty sure Jay's seen it as well.
You put up the picture, I think, on one of the streams I was into, I think.
I showed you two Ditto MathBlade. So there's a handful of people here who've actually seen a picture of me in high school. Yeah, like I said, I had advantages over some other trans people in being intersexed. Because even though I was masculinized by having testosterone in my system, it wasn't as bad because it was low levels, and I also had estrogen in my system because mixed biology. See, where do I go? If you're gonna be this turfy bitches that these people are, because a lot of them are women. The men are just fucking the same people who would pick on women in the first place anyway. They're just tagging on because picking on trans women is socially acceptable in their little thing. That's the whole thing there. So with for me, where are you going to shove me? Okay, yeah, I was assigned male at birth, but my genetics is mixed. I have both XX and XY chromosomes. As a teenager, I developed breasts, got period pains, which is bloody dreadful considering I couldn't get pregnant. And I had no idea what was going on. I mean, I knew I was trans. I knew that bit, but I didn't realize I was intersex. And I was really happy about developing these breasts, apart from all the teasing and bullshit that came along with it. So to say I had any male advantage in socializing because of that is just ridiculous, because I was visibly intersexed and visibly shat on. So there's no advantage there as for me. But yeah, that's irrelevant to this topic, except for the fact that she does bring up intersex people and she's got no fucking clue what she's talking about. I kind of wish Kitty had been able to make it in with us, because then we would have had two intersex people on the panel, which would have been awesome. For those who don't know, and Kitty does tell people about this, Kitty is a cis woman, but she is an XY cis woman. So, assigned female at birth, she is a woman. She's a cis woman because she's lived her entire life as a woman, but she has XY chromosomes. So, where would the TERFs put her? She's most definitely
no idea.
A woman. And this is the problem. There is no way that you can alienate out trans women without alienating cis women or intersex people.
Thank you.
Mero has a comment. Says, it actually might end up being better if they research trans people with MS. They understand the biology of the disease better. For JK.
Yeah. And the differences between men and women being affected by MS, they're not actually sure if that's hormone related or genetic related either. So if it's hormone related, then effectively, a bit like COVID, trans women actually have exactly the same effects as cis women, because the differences between men and women with the effects of COVID is hormones.
My cardiologist could not answer what I thought was a simple question. When I had my heart attack or began my cardiac problems, I asked why the symptomology I had wasn't based on a male anatomy, but was based on what they typically describe for women when they're having a heart attack and things, not men. Why was mine the female response and not the male response? And they couldn't answer. And we probably never will be able to. But interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I imagine you had a few thoughts on that.
All right, I will read her
No,
next
go ahead.
things. The second reason is that I'm a teacher and the founder of a children's charity, which gives me an interest in both education and safeguarding. Like many others, I have a deep concerns about the effect the trans right movement is having on both. What?
I almost became a teacher. That is bullshit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like, the only reason I'm not a teacher is because I had some issues I was working through, and that's primarily the other reason. The other reason is teaching also has a bit of politicalness that I may be willing to hop into a little bit later, but back in the past, I was not ready for it. Like, teaching is a noble profession because you care about the kids, yes, but there's also education that comes with that she's completely disregarding, is that every child is valuable.
Yeah.
Where they are and who they are. You don't tell a child who they are. Even if they're the laziest mother in the planet, you tell them, no, this is where you need to be. How do I get you there? You meet them where they are. You do not treat them like a piece of crap. That is not how you teach kids. And if she actually cared about kids, she never would have put this to paper.
The politicizing of teaching I've seen is when my chemistry teacher took an entire class to explain why Boy Scouts shouldn't be changing their name to Scouts and gun rights should be more of a thing.
I grew up in the South, so you can kind of guess I'm very liberal. I'll let you take that where it goes.
May I read and comment on her third point?
Yep, please.
Good.
I want the fourth, by the way, because reasons.
Okay.
The third is that, as a much banned author, I'm interested in freedom of speech and have publicly defended it even unto Donald Trump. I find it very interesting that she appeals to Donald Trump to qualify her defense, qualify her statement, when Donald Trump is the #1 American equivalent of every TERF ever born.
Yeah.
He is the worst possible human being on the planet for
doesn't
transgender
advocate
people.
for free speech.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
he definitely doesn't want free speech.
Especially that even unto Donald Trump, like, it's not like he responded to her. She was basically just yelling at a wall, like what most trans people do when they yell at J.K. Rowling.
It actually sounds like she was down on her knees praying at the altar of Dawn. And I won't put any more innuendo into that than was necessary.
Yep, no, we don't need a lawsuit.
Agreed there.
MathBlade, did you want to read the
I don't even
fourth
know what
one,
she was
or-
trying to say.
I do. The fourth one's kind of long, so in the interest of time, I'm not going to read everything she put there,
Yep.
because the fourth point kind of goes all the way till about the writings of young trans men. The fourth point, to be blunt, is that a lot of women are actually coming out and saying they're men. This is rapid. Don't trust it. And Aspie, don't trust it. There's this idea of don't trust women that are coming out. Notice she doesn't do that with men. She does it specifically with women, and she does it with Aspies. Now, I'm an Aspie, and I'm going to be blunt here. If you have a mental illness, you are still a fucking person. You are still a person that deserves love. You don't deserve stigma. You are who you say you are. Let's get you to who you say you are. And if you don't like it, I don't give a damn. Mental illness is a thing that needs to not be stigmatized. The other thing is that, yes, there's women, but this whole rapid onset gender dysphoria that she mentioned in a paper by Lisa Littman, it was something that was coined by people who didn't want to accept transphobia people. This study she mentions, it was sent out through emails to the parents of people who had trans kids who didn't want to accept their kids' gender. And a lot of them happened to be women. Oh no, it's rapid onset gender dysphoria. An author who actually did this really well, a really good rebuttal, which I will not read because it's an 18-minute read, but I will cite and then give the link to Nevermore, is Julia Serrano. It's titled Everything You Need to Know About Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria.
Yeah.
The
entire paper was discredited and had to be removed.
It had to be corrected. That wasn't corrected. It was a correction that wasn't a correction.
Oh yes.
Yeah, Julia actually gets into this, but one of the big things that she wrote really, really well was the I'm just going to read word for word for what she said. The term was intended to the term being rapid onset gender dysphoria was intended to explain some parents' observations that their children came out as transgender seemingly suddenly, often during puberty, and their children also had trans-identified peers and interacted with trans-themed social media. Unfortunately, it is not uncommon for reluctant parents to presume their child has adopted a trans or LGBTQ positive, more generally, identity as a result of undue influence from other children or outside sources, hence the recurring accusations about transgender agendas, peer pressure, and trans identity supposedly being trendy. Rapid onset gender dysphoria takes this presumption one step further. It asserts that any gender dysphoria these adolescents experience is an entirely new phenomenon that is wholly distinct from the gender dysphoria that transgender people have historically experienced, as described in blah, 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 blah. While rapid onset gender dysphoria is scientifically specious, the concept serves a very practical purpose. It provides reluctant parents with an excuse to disbelieve or their child's gender identity under the presumption that it is merely a byproduct of ROGD. It also provides rationale for restricting their child's interactions with transgender peers and access to translated information such as things or the imagined cause of the condition. That explains everything in a nutshell why she brought up ROGD, because she wants to legitimize something that has no legitimate purpose in any psychology journal in order to try to give her ideas standing as if it is an actual condition when it's not. This idea that ASPI people can't identify themselves, that trans men can't identify themselves, that no, this is just women being pedophiles. No, trans men are valid. Yeah. And she spends an entire section here trying to destroy the idea of trans men, especially when she says the writings of young trans men reveal a notably sensitive and clever people. The more accounts of gender dysphoria I've read with their insightful descriptions of blah, 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 the more I've wondered if I was born 30 years or later, I might have tried to transition. No, this is the exact same thing that Mike Huckabee did.
Yeah.
No, if you have dysphoria, if you are a guy, you just say you're a guy. It doesn't matter what year you're born in. You're still gonna have these symptoms. The only matter is whether you come out or not.
Also, I'd real quick like to mention with what you mentioned, like your own mental illness, and that she mentioned a lot of other trans men's mental illness, and she was like, I have severe OCD, and that might have made me transition. As someone who also has incredibly severe OCD, no.
Yeah.
No.
ASPI and trans are comorbid. That means they're seen commonly together because ASPI people don't give a about your stupid rules. We care about what reality is.
I don't know where she got the OCD thing from. Like, is that the only mental illness that she could think of that would make her be like, oh yeah, I might transition because of OCD? No, I didn't want to transition because I lost a picture and I felt the need to look for it for 4 hours. That had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
What's ASPI?
ASPI is short for
Asperger's.
It's also known as high functioning autism.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm very blunt, and sometimes I miss certain social cues. Apologies if I do, but yeah, it's literally just my brain is wired a little bit differently than yours. That's
Really?
it.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what MathBlade was saying, one of my nephews is an Aspie kid. And Aspie man, full grown now. And it's freaking insulting to have someone say, oh, people on the autism spectrum can't, figure out their own identities. So we have to tell them who they are. No.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, and full stop, and you're awesome, MathBlade. Thank you. But
that is a short
for my
version of the
nephew
rant
and for everybody, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you
is
for
the short
handling
version
that
of the
one.
rant I had. That is a short version I had. If we're running way over on time, but if you ever want to talk about this more, I'm definitely down to talk about this more.
Can I bring us back to one sentence? And her sentences are stupidly long that she has in that whole section. And it's the second sentence.
And poorly written.
Yeah.
Yeah, way over
it is so badly written. For somebody who's an author, she is a dreadful writer.
It's terrible.
Yeah, wrong planet. I want to mention something in chat, but go ahead. I want to come back to chat later.
I'll read this out, and then we can discuss this, and you can continue on. She goes, I'm concerned with the huge explosion in young women wishing to transition, and also about the increasing numbers who seem to be detransitioning, returning to their original sex, because they regret steps they've taken, in some cases alter their bodies irrevocably and taken away their fertility. Well, for a start, people aren't all about their fertility. That's a dreadful trope to go down, and you can go fuck yourself on that one, JK. Not everyone wants to have kids. Get over yourself. Secondly, that whole numbers of people detransitioning is a furphy. The studies that were done on it were not done accurately. More recent studies done in the UK and especially in Australia, which has very accurate records of it now, showed that in the last 20 years, the rate of detransition amongst trans people in Australia is 4%. So that's not a lot of people. That's a tiny number of people who might detransition. And there are a lot of reasons for detransitioning, whether or not it's peer pressure or it was you just misunderstood yourself. So that whole detransition thing is ridiculous. Yes, Jen?
I think it's absolutely critical for the layperson to understand that the entire medicalized process for a person to go through being transgender and to eventually have the surgeries, if indeed they desire that, is a process of checking, rechecking, and trying to insist on the balance between, am I trans? Is this right for me? Do I go further? And if the trials and therapies and stuff indicate you're not, then you don't. The whole process is about making sure that this is the right decision.
Yeah.
The whole process.
Hang on,
I'd like to mention in
Robin,
the second,
Yeah.
and then in the second paragraph, what in the world is she talking? Like, have any of you ever heard that 4,400% increase stat?
Yeah.
Because what?
Yeah.
That sounds like a made up number. That sounds like someone, like, not to use her own rhetoric. It sounds like a kid going 1 bajillion%. That's just
And even if
such
it's
a
true,
weirdly high number.
it's
Even
because
there's a
acceptance is happening.
4,000% increase.
It's
Well, she
because
doesn't have the
acceptance is
citations.
happening. Yeah,
Julie?
I know.
No, I'm sorry. MathBlade was talking, and then I'll
Yeah,
feel free to.
I was actually
Go
going to change the subject, but I was agreeing. But go ahead, and then I can change. The
Oh, okay.
subject.
Really quickly, and then feel free to change the subject. No, I was thinking about. Oh gosh, what was I thinking about? Oh no, sorry, I'm in my 40s. Yeah, just yeah. No,
well, hang on.
done.
Let me. I got a couple things I want to read real quick. One, we're at the 2-hour mark. Just so we know. The Lone Wanderer, I'll get to hit that question in just a second. I do. Okay, Randolph says many of us Aspies feel like we're on the wrong planet.
That's what I was going to hit on.
Oh my gosh. Okay, me too. Yeah, but
So,
you
okay.
talk first.
We'll swing back to that in just a second.
Okay.
Okay, so then the other one was the Lone Wanderer goes, how can you tell if you're intersex? What type of tests do you take? So you can go from the Asperger's or the intersex thing. It's up to you. I just want to get them out there before we move too far away.
I've answered the intersex stuff on other videos in the past, so we'll get to that to the end if we need to. I don't think it's actually relevant to this, but yeah, we are going really long, so actually going into that will take a long while. I will probably do a video on that at some point so that people can understand a bit more about intersex people, and I'll get a couple of intersex people on the panel to talk about it or something. So we'll do that as a separate thing. I don't want to fill this up with it because intersex is such a small part of this compared to the whole trans issues. So that's what I'll say. And back to MathBlade.
Yeah, Randolph had a really good point. Many of us Aspies feel like we're on the wrong planet. Wrong Planet is there's actually a forum for Aspies, which I haven't been on in a while, so I don't know if it's trans inclusive. I was on it before coming out as trans, like way when I was in the South. They actually have a great comic on there that I'm going to go ahead and put on a link. But I hope to actually go back and check and see if they're trans inclusive later. But that comic does an absolute gem of explaining Aspiness that words do not do justice. But I leaked the comic on there. But I hope that if you get a chance, you can explain why this aspiness has nothing to do with whether you can explain your gender, and that comic, I think, will explain why more than words ever could. So,
Well said.
it's a comic. It links to a forum that has the comic. The author does a brilliant job of it, and it's so brilliant. It just explains aspiness in such brilliant terms.
Yeah,
So,
no,
anyway.
absolutely well said. And just what I remembered what I wanted to say, and it was that, you know, the reason I think, and by the way, guys, you should all know I'm not a professional on any level of this. I'm just some chick with like an MFA in creative writing. I don't know shit. Okay, but there was the thing that I love about my nephew, and that I love about every person on the autism spectrum that I've ever met, is that they don't give a fuck, sorry for the language, about social convention. And I think that's why we see a correlation between people who are trans and people who are also on the autism spectrum. And it's because, thank you, MathBlade. Oh, thank you.
I got a question about
because I don't think they care, and I love that. I'm finished.
How would you determine an Australian Aspie? Because most of us have no concept of social convention.
Yeah, you guys say see you next Tuesday like it's hello. I don't know.
Well, see you next Tuesday isn't always regarded as how it is here in the U.S.
Absolutely. Absolutely
it's a social
true.
convention.
Absolutely
so...
true, MathBlade. You are correct.
Yeah.
So anyways, we might want to just like move to the last paragraph of the fourth thing so that we can move this along. Because I'm guessing
move it along.
Go for it.
Yeah, because I was just thinking that that's probably the last one that a lot of us have a lot of comments on, because I think MathBlade and I both have dismantled the stupid trans men or poor misguided trans
I
men.
think we've covered that pretty solidly.
That last paragraph. I'm guessing you have some opinions on women is not a costume.
Which spot are you at? So I make sure to talk about the right one.
Last paragraph right before, which brings me to the fifth reason. But as many women have said before me, woman is not a costume.
Yeah. It's not a costume.
Okay,
it's definitely not a costume. It's just like I'm just me. Like I've always been me. It's not a costume at all. It's like, yeah, hey, I just walk. I happen to watch football and watch beer. I happen to be a stereotypical guy in that regard. That doesn't mean that's what a guy is.
Yeah, same with me reading Transformers and other comic books.
I would like to know from J.K. Rowling if it's not a costume, why isn't she dressed every day in a three-piece tweed suit?
Oh goodness!
If it's not a costume, why can't trans women be women?
No, because women is not an idea in a man's head, which is I was curious if like Jen or Julie or Jen or Jenny had any.
This comes back to the fact that she got a lot of her ideas from Magdalene Burns, who, as I said earlier, described trans women as the same as blackface actors. So you're just pretending. You're not actually women. You're just dressing up in costumes, and you're doing all the frillies and stuff like that. So, which is what Magdalene Burns actually fucking believed about trans people. It's
I accept that.
Stereotypically, and it's horrible.
It's just where I live. That is such a harsh connotation. It carries so much weight and so much racial hatred that it's, oh my goodness, I can't even believe someone would say that. I mean, I do. Yeah. I'm sorry. I do believe it. It's so hateful. It's hard to accept.
I mean, I'm going to comment on... Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you actually read the next sentence after the bit you just read, you actually get right down to the crux of her not seeing trans women as women. Because she says, but as many women have said before me, woman is not a costume. Woman is not an idea in a man's head. So...
Also, I'm also kind of curious about the moreover inclusive language that calls female people menstruators and people with vulvas strikes many women as dehumanizing.
Yeah, thank you.
And yet she's quite prepared to dehumanize trans people in everything she says.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
oh no, you feel dehumanized.
right,
well,
well, and even I can argue that she's dehumanizing everyone. She's dehumanizing all genders because she wants to put all of us in this little box. And fuck you, I'm not in your little box.
And here's the problem: the only reason why things like menstruators and people with vulvas. Sorry,
Jen, hang on. Jenny was talking.
Yeah.
No. She jumped in first. Go ahead.
Okay,
finish up.
The problem with these things like this is if she's had things like menstruators and people with vulvas said to her, which is unlikely. Well, especially the people with vulvas, because trans women who've had surgery have vulvas, so fuck off. But if somebody's said menstruators to her, it's because she's refusing to say cis women and trans women, or cis men and trans men, and she's trying to say, oh, we're something special. So they're highlighting back to her using language that she will understand.
We're giving you words.
According to their definition of women and menstruation, my mom had transgender surgery in the mid 70s, or excuse me, the very early 70s, when she had a total hysterectomy because of her endometriosis issues. So.
Ding ding ding! Thank you, Jenny.
That's where I was going to go too.
Yeah, thank you, Granny.
There's lots of women that don't menstruate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For a variety of
I
reasons.
can't wait. Y'all don't even know. I cannot wait. I'm like counting. Women in my family hit menopause early, and I'm literally counting the days. I can't wait because I'm so over this nonsense. I'm a cis woman. I don't want kids. I don't have kids. It's all, I do everything I can to like prevent pregnancy because I'm also crazy and I can't get off of my medication in order to be pregnant. And so I'm not dissing anyone who has kids. I have many nieces and nephews that I love very much, but oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. It's like, how dare you boil me down to a uterus? How dare you boil anyone down to the some other part?
I want to cover something that happened on chat before we lose the context. Junk Shop Library. I do not know your pronouns, and I think
it's they them.
They them.
That's my spouse.
They them. They said, I feel that coming out like taking off a costume. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Quote
that's exactly what it is.
I just wanted to call it out because it was that good.
Thank you.
I was going to mention that when there was a lull, but go ahead, Granny, it's your turn.
I know we were talking about menstruating. Don't remember where I was.
Bloody
though.
well,
Sorry.
right? Oh.
No, I think the question is, are you still a woman? Whether you have a uterus or not.
Thank you. Yeah, I got into this in some comments on a video when somebody said, if you don't menstruate, you're not a woman, and I said, I don't menstruate, because I had a hysterectomy 5 years ago, and they said, well, who would want to, consider you? You're just an old bag.
Oh.
Really?
Oh,
yeah.
Granny, I'm so sorry.
Holy fuck.
Can I have the address of this person, please?
Man,
I want to talk.
Don't dox anyone right now, but seriously, after the stream,
doxing as much as these people are evil is a
it
very
was on
bad
the
idea.
chat of one of the
don't
Rationality
dox
Rules
people.
videos.
Yeah, I don't want to dox people. I just want to hit them with a chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Have we covered the fourth point enough?
Violence is not the answer. I think we've
so,
covered it enough.
There is one thing I might
want
say.
To go on it more.
There is one thing I might say. Sorry, MathBlade.
If you want to talk about it more, I'm definitely down to be invited for future discussion.
Yeah, there is one point
I would be happy to get more talk.
I would too. There's one more point I would like to make to that because it fits into what a question you stated and something you were saying before, Robin, is that with her figures, her 4,400%.
4,000.
her asserting that the numbers of trans people have increased dramatically fails to take into account a couple of things. First of all, there are a lot more people in the world now than there were 20 years ago. Secondly, people are more aware of what it is to be trans, and being trans is more acceptable now than it was. So a lot of people who wouldn't have transitioned, who would have whose maybe dysphoria wasn't quite so bad that they were forced by the dysphoria to transition, but could hid instead of transitioning. These people
or
now
people with
transition.
euphoria.
Yeah. And the other thing is she talks about, these young people transitioning. Well, for the same reasons. There's more information, there's more support, there's more parents who are knowing and understanding. So people are transitioning younger, which is a good thing, because they get to live most of their life happy in the gender that they are, instead of having to live a fucking lie. So on every conceivable way, her points are wrong. Add to that, we were wrong in our calculations of how many trans people there are in the world, because the records weren't kept particularly well. We now know that's about 1% of the population. So
we were also expected to disappear after transition, and so we don't show up on any kind of surveys because we were told to disappear after transition.
Exactly.
Because
Julie,
if you didn't, you would be murdered.
Oh no, I'm sorry. What Jenny just said, that's heartbreaking, and
it is.
I'm so sorry. No, I was just gonna say that, like, and another issue that happens is that there's a I need to phrase this very carefully. I know some kids who were F to M, right? And so one of the things they would do to stop their periods from happening is they'd stop eating.
That's where I was going earlier. I've got a daughter that her periods stopped a few times because she got so thin. And she didn't do it on purpose.
Really thin
it is not healthy.
Yes. Don't do it.
No,
not good for you.
No, that's not about me. It's about someone I know.
I'm so sorry. Yes, it can, and that is not advice on any level. It's a level of this is where this can get more messed up. When
I was not going to mention that,
should be able to go get puberty blockers and make up their own mind. Then they should not have to endanger their their lives in order to, to be who they are. And that was my point with that. I really hope.
Yeah.
I just made some things fall into place with a friend of mine, so I was just like,
I've got two comments from the chat here. Thomas Hamilton says, I once saw someone online say, you're not a woman if you can't get pregnant. Highly offensive. I'm adopted because my mom, who is a cis woman, can't have children. The next one is from Lexa Black. There was also in the earlier section above the women are not costumes bit where she sneakily attempts to link Trump/sexual assault, incels, and jumping to trans people. Oh, and her being a swerve too.
Yes, she did.
She did do that.
Yeah.
But we're trying
I just kind of wanted to move on since we got to get to the fifth point because that one's going to be a doozy.
I need to say one disclaimer before we move on.
Yes.
If you are having an eating disorder, by all means, please seek help. Do not use it at all for any sort of trans treatment. I understand sometimes people do self-treatment. I would prefer if you went to a doctor, but if you have the ability to go to a doctor, go to a doctor. Don't self-medicate. But if you have to self-medicate, never do that. Ever. You're better off having your period.
Exactly.
Because you will ruin your chance of actually transitioning if you fucking mess up your system.
Oh, really?
Because different health conditions, people say you should not be transitioning for them. That's part of actually trying to get hormones is you have to go through your checklist. If you do something that actually harms your body and makes you outside of the WPATH guidelines, they can say you may not have to do hormones. You may have to take care of this other thing first.
Exactly.
Yes. MathBlade is absolutely correct. If you have a comorbidity like that has turned into an eating disorder, they won't let you get the hormones.
You have to sort out your other conditions first before most. Although that's not always the case now, because you can You can, if you're an adult, you could sign waivers in some countries and get on medication without having psychological counselling. I personally, I don't believe in gatekeeping. I will say that straight off. I don't think a person's right, especially as an adult, an adult's right to transition shouldn't be gatekept by a psychologist and a doctor. However, I do think that all trans people who transition should have to go and do counselling, because there are always other issues that come along with that, due to depression caused by being from dysphoria, if you have it, and some of the bullying that can come along. And having that counselling is helpful. People who are scared of counselling really, really need to have another look at it, because counselling is good for you.
Yeah, and I'd like to mention with the bullying thing, because I remember I was bullied a lot as a kid and called like a man, and was like, oh, you're a man, you're a boy, you like boy things. So yeah, that might have had something to do with my current gender identity.
Isn't that just so normal though? I mean, because I of course copped it the other way around, and it was almost validating but terrifying at the same time.
Well, I got it because I didn't conform. I was called you're a lesbian, you're a dyke, you're all this stuff, and I was like, no, I actually like both. It's fine. Yeah, but anyway, this isn't about me, and I'm not going to get into that.
But that's all a product of the patriarchy and misogyny, which is why feminism is so important, people.
Yes, for
actual
all
feminism,
genders,
not turfism.
Yay.
There I went. There,
gee, I just got called sissy faggot and then beat up in the locker room.
Oh, honey.
Oh well, things are different now.
I'm so sorry.
All right,
I survived.
I know you did.
Let's move on to point 5. Let's try and get through this reasonable pace, because we're well over 2 hours now, and I'm pretty sure Jay's getting sick of this.
I'm fine. I'm good.
You're fine. Okay.
Extra love to all the people in the chat right now.
You guys are amazing.
Yes.
You've stayed with us. Thank you so much.
I was just gonna mention we're pushing the 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I think we'll get through point 5, which is close to her last point, but I think we might end there because it is the real big doozy. And I am very tempted to have some of you back at various times to go through this again. In fact, all the panel, because
I would love to.
I can run that on my own, because if there's only the 6 of us, excluding Jay. Sorry, Jay. I can do it myself without having to harass Jay about using his Zoom. So I'd be more than happy to throw that together at some point, and we can have another discussion on various points and go in a bit deeper, because I think it's interesting.
Yes,
and I
please.
think there are a lot of things that people still want to talk about it, and we could probably do the couple of main ones really in depth. So let's go on and do the next bit. The next part is where she talks about being a sexual assault survivor. I will gloss over the fact that she had to ask her daughter's permission to talk about this, because I fail to see how that's relevant at all. It's like she goes, I'm a sexual assault survivor, so I think that we need to keep these men out of our spaces because they might hurt us, is basically what she says in about 3 paragraphs. I don't know if there's bits of this that people want to pull out exactly, but she's like, for example, she talks about, women who have histories like mine who've been slurred as bigots for having concerns around single-sex spaces. I'm sorry, JK. I'm sorry for what happened to you. Your ex was an absolute pig of a man, an absolute fucking arsehole, and I'm so sorry for what happened to you. But, and this is an enormous but, the abuse that you went through is not an excuse for you to abuse other people, you fucking pillock.
And it's also a non sequitur, because, yeah, a guy assaulted you. That doesn't relate to trans women in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and she even says, I'm not saying this to gain sympathy. Yes, you are.
Yes, she is. Thank you. Thank you, Robin.
She's
Yeah.
gaslighting.
I agree. I agree with her.
Oh!
How's that for controversial? I think we should keep men out of women's spaces.
Oh, I agree. But
She just doesn't know what men
actual
are.
men.
She just doesn't know what men are. That's all.
the problem.
There you go. Thank
I
you,
just
Jenny.
wish a lot of stuff was gender neutral. Like, there's no reason to have segregated bathrooms. You just put tampons and put urinals in a gender neutral bathroom, and you're golden.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually argued that
She thinks men buy tampons and use them in a sexual fashion. Really? How does that work?
I wrote a big long post on Twitter in response to this, where I basically said, because in the Marxist paragraph, well, no, she doesn't, but other people do say that we should have separate facilities for trans people. Like, that's even remotely feasible. But that aside, I wrote that we already have a separate facility. We have a disabled toilets in most places, and in quite a lot of places they're done as a separate thing. If you have psychological trauma that makes it uncomfortable for you to be in public spaces with other people, you should be allowed to use those facilities. It is a psychological condition that it causes that, a social anxiety like that is a disability. Mental health can cause disabilities and issues with people behaving using public facilities, and I totally get that. If that is her problem, then that is her problem, and she probably needs a lot of counseling to help her deal with that. She shouldn't be taking it out on trans women. I think people in her position who have these issues, who are scared of other people in public facilities, should be allowed to use the disabled facilities so they can have a private space that they can go and use for themselves, go to the toilets. For trans people who are quite happy going in with other women, and for cis women who are happy to go in with trans women, all use the women's facilities. If you're a trans person, you're uncomfortable, use the disabled facilities. That is your choice to do that. Do not force other people out of facilities they have a right to use. Yes, Julie.
Oh, thank you. No, I just okay. So in Virginia, I forget if it was north or south. I don't fucking care. Sorry. In Virginia, they passed one of these horrible bathroom bills, and one of the first pictures we saw was this big, tall, full bearded biker dude taking a selfie of himself in a ladies' toilet with a little old lady who was about 4'11", very nervously washing her hands and glancing his way because he had to go into the toilet that was that aggregated, if that's the right word, with his assigned gender at birth. And it was so awesome because it was so absurd. It was like, yes, this is what's wrong. And I want to say very clearly, I've never been threatened by trans women. I mean, it seems stupid to even say, but trans women are women. You're women. There doesn't even, I don't need the trans in front of it. Women are women, you know, and I've never been threatened. And you know what? I'm a survivor of sexual assault too. And I'm also a survivor of domestic abuse. And you know, for her to use that in this moment to say, oh, men are just going to, like, I don't know, what is she even thinking? Dress up in a skirt and go into a ladies' bathroom so they can prey on women? Like, that's not happening. That's not happening anywhere. It's absolutely insane.
It's like there's special sensors on the door that can detect can detect all aspects of biological sex and make a firm decision about what gender you are and keep the bad ones out.
Right?
Because
So,
that's not how toilets work. Sorry.
No.
Hang on, MathBlade, guys.
Randolph Richardson asked, "What the heck? Why would anybody want to take a selfie in a restroom?" So I might want to provide a little context here. There was a law that was passed, like was mentioned before, that said you had to go. I'm paraphrasing with the assigned gender on your birth certificate. the assigned gender on your birth certificate. That's where you had to go. So this trans guy was protesting the law, and he already had a full beard and everything. And so he was the very personification of what the law was trying to prevent was a quote man, because trans women are women. I just have to say that for the argument makes sense. In the women's bathroom. So you had a man who is a trans man in the women's bathroom. So that's what the picture was trying to demonstrate, was the entire law was creating men in the women's bathroom.
Yeah. Exactly. And trans men are men. You are a man. MathBlade.
It should be pointed out that restrooms are a little different in the United States than evidently what they are in Australia, because here, disabled restrooms, they have a disabled stall in the women's room and a separate one in the men's room. There isn't a disabled that's gender neutral, but they are building a lot more gender neutral restrooms. But it really started because so many parents need to take an opposite sex child to the restroom, and rather than taking an opposite sex child into the wrong restroom, they made gender neutral restrooms for them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Granny. Yeah, and those are often referred to as family restrooms, but it's basically so like a dad can take his infant daughter into a bathroom and change her.
I got 2 comments in the chat here. Randolph Richardson says sex neutral washrooms exist in some universities and government buildings here in Canada, and there have been no problems aside from a few complaints from evangelicals. And then Lexa Black says she basically was weaponizing trauma, which is horrible, no question, as leverage and cudgel to try and get out of the hole she dug and argue her positions, harming people and playing victim.
Oh, well said.
And in all honesty, there are several of us on this platform that could do that if we chose to, because Julie's not the only survivor of domestic violence and rape. I am as well, and I do not take that out on men, despite the fact that it was in both cases it was a man who did that to me. Not all men are responsible for the action of those 2 men.
Absolutely.
And if you want to do that, then you're the one who needs to go and get some therapy. And that's not victim blaming. It is not your fault for what the person did to you. That is entirely down to them, and I'm so sorry for you. But go and get some therapy. Try and get over this and try and move on, because if you're going to fill your life up with hate because of something that somebody did to you, then you are going to have a shallow life because of it.
Yeah, advocate for rape kit testing. Advocate for putting rapists in jail. That almost never happens. There are things that can be done. I am not a victim, thankfully, but there's a lot of good videos. Like Samantha B has done some. There are a lot of good videos out there that say, hey, this system is flawed. Fight the system, not the people.
Yes. And in the backlog on rape kits in the U.S., because we have a ridiculous backlog of rape kits that have never been processed. But sorry, MathBlade. I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read this little bit from this section, where she goes, I believe the majority of trans-identified people not only pose zero threat to others, but are vulnerable for all the reasons I've outlined. So she's trying to say here that she thinks trans people are just as vulnerable as cis people, although she doesn't put it that way. Trans people need and deserve protection like women. No, trans women are women. Trans men are men. Get over it, JK. You're fucking wrong.
So I want to point out a dog whistle before you lose sense of the word. Trans-identified is a dog whistle that gets used in those types of communities. Jamie Dodger is an excellent trans guy who does a video series on it. He's from the UK. I should have thought to mention him before, but he does an excellent videos on how to supposedly spot. He destroys these videos, by the way, and how to spot a trans woman and a trans guy. And he points out the trans-identified slur and then how they do all the pronouns and all these things and how they actually apply to cis people. It's a brilliant video. If you ever get a chance to watch, Jamie Dodger is a brilliant trans guy channel. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'll
just
keep
wanted to call it
reading
the dog whistle.
they are most likely to be killed by the sexual partners. Trans women who work in the sex industry, particularly trans women of colour, are at particular risk. Like every other domestic abuse and sexual assault survivor, I feel nothing but empathy and solidarity with trans women who've been abused by men. Trans women who have been abused by men are part of the statistic of women who have been abused by men. It's exactly the same thing. It's done for exactly the same reasons, generally, especially if you're talking about sexual abuse. Some of it is also related to homophobia. So trans women caught both, thank you very much, society. But it is, but basically she's trying to feign support here whilst being separating trans women from women in her dialogue. Yes, Julie. Sorry, you've had your hand up for a while.
Oh, sorry. No, you're fine. I loved everything that you said. That was the quote I wrote down when I was reading the thing last night, and it was that exact quote. So my note was, it's so hypocritical. She clearly doesn't see trans women as women, and there's a clear separation between who Rowling thinks are quote unquote real women and trans women. The truth is, we're all women.
Yep.
And that's what's important. The fact that then she went on to the bathroom argument, like, seriously? Are you... I just had this moment of, like, are you kidding me? Really?
Well, yes, I was about to read that paragraph so that we can get how far she goes down that. I think we'll end with this paragraph. She goes on after that to talk about the GRA reforms in the UK, but I think we'll do that as a separate stream, along with doing the stuff the bad stuff that's come out of the UK plus the stuff that's happened in the US. I think we'll do them as separate streams because we have gone so long. So I will read this paragraph, we'll talk about it, and then we'll end up. Okay, so the next paragraph is, so I want trans women to be safe. At the same time, I do not want to make natal girls and women less safe. When you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, and as I've said, gender confirmation certificates now only are granted without any need for surgery or hormones, then you open the door to any or all men who wish to come inside. That is the simple truth. So, straight out there, completely stated it, that she doesn't see trans women as women. She sees them as men. We shouldn't allow these men in our bathroom. She states it outright that she doesn't understand any of this at all. She also doesn't understand the GRA reforms because they don't state that. There is a push to, well, the reforms are a push to make it easier for people to get the certificates, but certificates aren't want to allow trans women to use those facilities. Trans women will use those facilities without a GRA certificate. It's part of being. In fact, it was actually a requirement of transition for a long time as part of when they used to do real life tests, that you had to blend in and go and use female facilities because you had to prove that you were woman enough to transition if you were a trans woman. And
that's very true in the States.
So
like, you had to live as the opposite gender for at least 1 year before you could get confirmation degree.
And I'm sure Jen will confirm that. Go on, Jen.
It's still a thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yes, absolutely. That was a rule, big time. The Pink News out of the UK ran a story recently. They talked to the people who first introduced the concept of the bathroom bill into the public vernacular, and explained how they made it up 100% because they knew it would tug at the emotions of the people who didn't know anything about the subject. That its full intention was to be manipulative and deceitful. There is no bathroom issue.
No.
There isn't.
No, it was purely made up as a way to attack, and originally to attack gay and lesbian people, and then later adapted to attack trans people. There is no issue. It was the same. They did the same thing using that study that came out of Sweden about offence patterns for trans and cis people where they did a comparative thing, and the TERFs completely misrepresent this study. What the study showed was there were in the first part, because they took it from the 80s all the way up until the mid around 2015, I think it was. So in the early part of the study, if you just use those figures, there were more trans women offended more often than cis women. They didn't actually categorize what type of offenses they were. So what you then find is when you take it from beyond about the mid-90s, when more acceptance came out for trans people and stuff like that, that completely changed, and the offense rates for trans women is exactly the same as cis women now. And I think the biggest difference was quality of life for trans people. So more trans women had to get into prostitution and other things because it was the only way they could survive. So they were more likely to get arrested and put into prison, and that puts you down the road of crime because you get stuck in those circles and things like that. Plus, they ended up being put usually in men's prisons and getting abused and everything. So it was a horrible thing. But if you actually take it from a current thing, the offense rates across the board are exactly the same for cis women as there are for trans women. As there are more cis women than trans women, cis women have more to fear from other cis women in bathrooms than they do from trans women. Bottom line. You're muted, Julie.
I'm sorry, I'm muted because I was constantly responding to things verbally.
Well, did you want to say
but
something?
yes, I completely agree. I can confirm. Yeah. And it's, the thing is that sexual assault is not a gendered thing. It's not just cis men who commit sexual assault. Lots of people, unfortunately, do. And that is awful, and that sucks, and I hope that someday our species evolves beyond that. But the fact is,
I hope we just evolve to where there's no sexual assault.
Because it's not. Thank you.
This is one of the problems they have in the UK, because in the UK, women cannot commit rape.
Oh, that's bullshit.
It's not legally possible for women to commit rape in the UK. They can have sexual assault, but they cannot commit rape. So
I don't respect
the trans
legality.
women rape way more often than cis women. Yeah, because you can't, according to your law. So there's no statistics for it.
There you go.
Alabama, even in Alabama, the only people who can't legally rape are gay people. Only can rape in Alabama, but gay people can't.
Even getting away from the,
I shouldn't be laughing. I'm sorry, but
no, it's okay. Like, even getting away from rape and sexual assault, it's like when Jung Shop and I got married, first cousins in Tennessee could get married in Tennessee, but two same-sex couples, biological sex couples, could not. Right, and that was we celebrated our 5th anniversary in March. That was only 5 years ago. I mean, it's different now, thank goodness. But it's just, this is a systemic problem.
Oh, it is. It's very systemic. So,
except they can still marry their first cousin.
I know, and that is so fucked up, man.
I agree. That is.
I think Jay has a text to read. Has a message to read out to you. So,
Randolph Richardson says, "I'm not trans, and I support people transitioning because I think it's important for people to have the freedom to live honestly as their true selves."
Yes,
Randolph.
Yes, Randolph.
Thank you.
And Lexa Black says, "Nothing is stopping men from attacking women, or worse, now there's laws against rape and such already. It's just more fear mongering aimed at trans people, especially trans women."
Yes, and that's why I got so angry when J.K. Rowling brought up her domestic abuse and being sexually assaulted as a virtue signaling for saying, I don't want men around. It's like, no, they're not men. You don't even get it on the most base level.
By the way, since these bathroom laws have come into vogue, there have been virtually no arrests of transgender people using women's bathrooms. There have been, however, many harassments of cis women trying to use women's bathroom because it didn't look perfectly feminine.
Oh, yeah, and that's the thing. If you police bathrooms, you are going to hurt way more cis people than you will trans. There are way more cis people. I saw a tweet the other day. Somebody said, "It's amazing how trans passing some cis people are." But it's true. I mean, a lot of trans people. I mean, Jen and I, as trans women, do not cop problems if we go and use women's facilities. No, and I don't think you, apart from maybe when you first transitioned, ever really have, because we blend, we pass, we don't have issues. There are some trans women who will have issues. There are going to be a shit ton more cis women who are going to not quite pass their standards of femininity, which is the whole thing feminism was against in the fucking first place. Policing women. So get off your... Don't call yourself feminist, because all you're doing is policing women. Oh, we're not policing women because we're policing trans people. No, you're policing women, because ultimately, even if you are going to discount trans women as women, you are still policing fucking cis women in the same way that you're policing trans women. You absolutely fucking pillocks. You are... You deserve all the shit that people give you, because you are absolute cunts.
I agree. Wholeheartedly. It's so frustrating. No, it makes me so angry. It's like, what? Okay, no, stop.
Yeah, I think I've done the
Come on,
angry
breathe slowly.
We are heading up
You'll
towards
be okay,
3 hours.
Thank you,
I think we should probably wind this one up. We will definitely do
I need to
some
go to
more
sleep.
and cover this. And I want to thank you all, Julie, Robin, GodlessGranny, Jenni Morgan, my wonderful, wonderful friend, MathBlade, my friend.
Hey.
I love you all, and thank
Jay.
you so much, Jay, for moderating and keeping us all honest. You have been absolutely brilliant. I love you to pieces. Thank you so much.
Can I say one last thing, if that's okay?
Yes, please.
Can I say one?
Yeah, go.
So we discussed a lot of difficult topics tonight, and as part of that, if you're having trouble with any of this, please reach out. It doesn't have to be to me, but my DMs are open on Twitter. If you feel more comfortable talking to some of the trans ladies, I'm sure they've got their contact information down in the chat. If you want to talk to Robin, he may have his contact information there. But
I think mine's in the description.
Yes, it is, Robin.
Yeah. If you need it, please reach out. If we're not the right person to help you, we can try to help you find who is. Because certain things, please don't harm yourself. Please don't. Please, if you are a victim of sexual assault, please reach out. If you are having an eating disorder, please reach out. If you're an egg that doesn't know how to communicate it, please reach out. If you're an Aspie, please don't hide it and go to therapy, seek treatments. Or if you don't need therapy, at least be vocal enough to understand, hey, these are my failings, so we can all come together as a society. So please don't hide pain. Okay, I just want to make sure we covered that, because this channel got really deep really quick in places I didn't think it was going to get to.
Can I read one thing out of
just
chat?
so much of me cry.
May I please read one thing out of chat?
Yeah, please.
From our
Sorry, I made you
favorite
cry.
doorknob head. Control women? Question. Is there enough chocolate in the world for such a thing?
No.
I love you, daughter.
Richard Randolph comes back with, no, there isn't enough chocolate in the world to control women. That's why religion was invented.
Oh my God! Yeah, wrong. Damn it, Richard. You're not wrong.
That was awesome.
I
just does anyone have anything coming up?
Well, I've got a thing about Tennessee just basically made abortion illegal. So I'm gonna talk about that tomorrow around 2 p.m. Central USA time, which is 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I think.
It's sleep
No,
time
that
for
might
me,
be wrong. Anyway.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's no, it's all right. It's all right. Australians will be asleep. You can watch it in replay. I'm going to talk about that, but other than that, I just kind of want to piggyback on what MathBlade just said and say, you know, hey, if you want to talk and you need somebody to talk to, even if you're a cis person who's like, I don't get all of this weird trans shit, it's okay. You know, reach out and ask questions. That's okay. You know, we're not going to hate on you for asking questions. So you can email me at jklavoice@gmail.com. It's Lavoice just like it's spelled. I know it's weird. Move on from that. And you can DM me on Twitter. It's fine.
I think everyone's Twitters are down below. Most of us have our DMs open. If you DM me, it tends to go to the private bit of Twitter, and I may not notice it for a day. So I apologize for that. But I will. If you shout me out in a Twitter thread to get my attention, that's fine too. I don't care if people do that. I'm always open to talking to people if they want to ask questions, if they want to know something. That's great. So yeah, please reach out. Don't ever feel like you're alone.
And I'm open to talking to anyone just because I'm bored and on my phone 24/7.
Don't talk to me. I don't know nothing.
Careful, Robin. You might end up with a follow and a message and a new friend.
What have you?
I would adore that.
Granny?
Excuse you. I already followed you.
What have you got coming up, Granny?
The wedding of Darth Dawkins and Kent Hovind is coming up soon, although we are having to postpone it again. So we're going to have to reset the date. Well,
it wasn't that.
Actually, it was somebody being unavailable that was really necessary for the
it wasn't my fault.
We know they're worried about the wedding night. That's
Kent
what's
Hovind
happening.
got cold feet.
They don't know what they're supposed to do. It's fine.
That's right. Robin has it. And I'm going to do a 250 subscriber celebration in the next few days. I just got to figure out exactly when I want to schedule it.
Cool.
Probably Tuesday evening.
Awesome. And Jay, what you got coming up? What have you got coming up?
Nothing. I got Ilya and Punji back on next Saturday, but that's about it.
Do you have problems getting stuff to come up, or?
No, I'm good with that.
Okay.
We have a stream coming up on Monday night with Atheist Pastor.
Yeah, but I didn't want to bring that up.
Okay.
Because I didn't know, because I think it's something that he wants to promote himself, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that.
So keep an eye on Atheist Pastor because he'll bring this up.
Yeah.
Also, you'll be doing your conspiracy thing, I assume, on Wednesday with Bobby?
I believe so, but I'm not sure if we know what's going on yet. I got to get a hold of Chris. Yeah, I think we're going to do the JFK assassinations, which I think me and Bobby is going to actually agree on some things on that one. So that could be interesting.
I've got a video coming out this week on female masturbation, which apparently I have to do naked now because I did a poll. So that's going to be interesting.
I expect to see nipples.
Yeah, I know you said that, but YouTube won't let me do that.
No, but Twitter would.
Not for long. Actually, no, they don't ban people for doing that.
No, I've seen some messed up shit on Twitter. So.
Yes,
yes, there is.
Obviously, we'll have another one of these. I'm not sure when. I'll have to talk with the people who... I think I'll keep it down to the group that we've got here because they'll be a lot more easier to organise. And we can go from there and figure out when we're going to do that. I should have a debunking video out this week. I also released a video yesterday on just all about the history and about gravity. So So if people want to go and check that out, you're on my channel already. Go and have a look. Otherwise, please follow, like, subscribe to all these wonderful, lovely, amazing people. And Jen wants to say something. Yep.
You didn't ask me if I got anything coming up.
Have you got anything coming up, Jenny?
No, I don't. But
Actually,
I did put my
you do.
email in the chat, and you can get me on Twitter by my in real life name, which I use. I'm not afraid of that, which is Jenni Morgan. Please feel free, if you feel you got to ask questions, please, I'll take the time. I'll be more than happy to work with you with anything you got going.
Jen and I have a project coming up that we are working together with a couple of people. One of them an ex-TERF, where we're going to be discussing whether TERF, the gender critical movement is a cult. So you have got something coming up.
Yeah, but it's yours. It's your channel. It's your but it's your channel.
It's on my channel, but it's our project. I say to you. So I'll say yes. Sorry.
I was gonna say Doorknob Head said female masturbation. Did a poll. The jokes just write themselves.
Yeah, I realized it when I said it, but I should have known Doorknob would bring it up. Okay, I think we're done here. Thank you so much, everybody. You've all been amazing. I look forward to our next group video going into some more of these issues. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to everybody in the chat who's still there now, who has been there throughout. Those of you who actually were here for the entire show, you are absolutely amazing. I love you to pieces. And good night, everyone. Bye.
Be water, my
Bye.
friends.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for giving me the attention I so desperately crave.
You're still awesome, Robin.